And we are live for week 11. How we doing, everybody? It is going to be a fantastic Sunday, week 11. We are almost 3 months in, a lot of great games today, a lot of difficult start sit decisions. Today, we're going to be live for at least the next 3 hours. We're going to talk through every single game, every single relevant player. We'll talk about some unrelevant players on this live stream today as well. We got a familiar name at the top of the rankings list this week, Christian McCaffrey. The first week heading in, he projects easily as the best fantasy football option ahead of Lamar Jackson. We have not seen running backs and receivers projecting over quarterbacks really this entire season. Good to see CMC back. We're going to go through every single game. This is the plan on the live for those that are new here. For those that are not new here, smash the like button. You guys know how much it helps. I appreciate it. For those that are new here, we're going to go through every single game over the next hour or so. I'll give you all of my thoughts about what I expect to happen in the game, how I'm approaching different fantasy players in those games. I have rankings on the TikTok live and the YouTube live to share as I go through this. Then we will get to the free player props. I have 2 free player props for you today. We cashed on Thursday night. Again, Kenneth Gainwell hit easily. He had over 40 rushing yards. The line was at 13.5. Hopefully you've had Saquon Barkley in your captain slot on DraftKings as well on Thursday night. We talked about that on Thursday live. Trying to hit 65% on the free player props if we go 2 for 2 this week. Then we got the DraftKings lineup. Then we will grind it out with start sits basically the rest of the live. So I will get to a lot of comments on this live stream. All right, let's jump to the Jaguars-Lions game. Let's start with this one because there were some reports this morning that Doug Peterson's gone if the Jaguars lose this game. Well, I'll cut to the chase for you guys. The Jaguars are losing this game. The Jaguars are the biggest underdogs of the week in this game. They are 14-point underdogs in Detroit. We have not seen an underdog this large, at least not many, this entire season. They are basically drawing dead in this game from the get-go. So Doug Peterson's gone. He's going to be fired after this game. Mac Jones is starting as well. That did not go well for the Jags last week. He had a rushing touchdown and QB sneak, I think on the first drive of the game. Did absolutely nothing passing-wise, though. Guys, he had, what was his quarterback rating? It was a 38 quarterback rating, 5 yards per attempt for Mac and Cheese Mac Jones last week. Saved his fantasy day to some extent with a rushing touchdown. He scored a rushing touchdown and only scored 7 fantasy points. He had 1.2 points from his passing, threw 2 picks at the end of the game, got sacked 3 times. You know, it turns out he's not going to be as good as Trevor Lawrence was, and Trevor Lawrence wasn't even doing very well. Makes Brian Thomas Jr. a very risky start. There's still a ceiling for BTJ in this game. He's been really disappointing back-to-back weeks, under 6.5 fantasy points. Another good game on paper. They're going to be trailing in this game. They're going to need Brian Thomas Jr. in this game, and he is playing still almost every single snap. He's still playing every single snap. He's going to be out there over 85% of the snaps. You know, he's dealing with a chest injury, but he seems fine in terms of his playing time. So there's still a ceiling here for Brian Thomas Jr. You could do worse than Brian Thomas Jr. I saw a comment earlier in the live if you should start Brian Thomas Jr. or Josh Downs. I would go Brian Thomas Jr. there, I think, with Anthony Richardson starting. Hop over to the wide receiver ranks. You only pull up the wide receiver ranks on both lives. We are live on TikTok and YouTube. The link to the YouTube live is in the TikTok bio. If you're watching live on TikTok, I'm telling you, it is a better viewing experience because I can share my screen and I can pull up comments on screen. So yeah, the Jags are getting killed in this game, but Tank Bigsby's out. That makes Travis Etienne a pretty good start. This is about as good of a role as you could project ahead of a game for Etienne in the better part of a month. I mean, Etienne's been dealing with injuries of his own. He's lost a lot of the ground game work to Tank Bigsby, but Bigsby's out. He had a 68% snap share in his last game. He should be at least that in this one. Tank Bigsby played in part of that game last week. He saw 61% of the carries, only a 5% target share. Do expect Dearness Johnson to mix in the pass game. Travis Etienne's not a smash must start, but I think he's a decent start with Bigsby out, even in kind of a tough matchup versus the Lions. I think there's a better pass game role than what we saw last week, probably coming for Etienne. Then Evan Ingram is the only other guy on this team that is a strong start. He had 6 catches for 40 yards last week, was a top 10 tight end without a touchdown. He's probably not scoring a touchdown again this week with Mac Jones starting. But he's in one of the better roles in the league. He's been over 33% target share in back-to-back games. I think over half the targets from Mac Jones went to tight ends last week. If I go down to Brenton Strange here, I'm pretty sure he had a significant target share, 14% target share for Brenton Strange, 37% target share for Evan Ingram last week. And even Luke Farrell had a 10% target share. There was over 50% of the passing attempts went to the tight ends for the Jags last week. So Evan Ingram is really a must start in a lot of situations. The tight end landscape this week feels as bleak as it's been since the beginning of the season. No George Kittle today. Travis Kelce's in a tier of his own. I have Travis Kelce 2 tiers above any other tight end this week. We'll get to that in a second. On the Lions side of the ball, so the Lions are 14-point favorites. The Jaguars defense has been terrible against basically every single position this season. Jahmyr Gibbs is a must start. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a must start. Jared Goff is not a must start. Dave Montgomery is a must start. I'm a little bit nervous about the passing attack for the Lions in this one. I'm not convinced they're going to need to throw at all. And we have seen them skew run heavy at times this season. They want to be a run first team. This game feels like it's going to be like this game against the Titans, where the game's over in the first quarter. Jared Goff throws for less than 100 passing yards, but 3 passing touchdowns. Something like this is definitely in the cards versus the Jags as 14-point favorites at home in a game that's not going to be close. So Goff is startable, but he's not a must start. Amon-Ra is still a must start. Amon-Ra has 7 straight games with a touchdown. 7 consecutive games, and this has to be the best streak in the league. And he's got to be getting close to some type of NFL record if he goes 8, 9, 10 straight over the next couple of weeks. He has a pretty good shot to keep that streak going. He has to be started. Downs or Myers? I think I'd go Myers over Downs. And then Jameson Williams, I saw some start sit questions with him in them. I really don't think you can start Waymo Jamo in this game. Again, there's pass volume concerns. They're 14-point favorites. It's not a bad matchup. I mean, sure, there's a ceiling of a couple big plays for Jameson Williams in this game. He was back to his normal role in week 10, 73% of the snaps after missing a couple games due to suspension. Had a bunch of air yards, 140 air yards, 21% target share. Like, good role for Jameson Williams last week. So I get it. I get there's a ceiling there. You're probably going to find a better option, though, that you're considering. All right, let's get to the next game here. Lions-Jags, pretty straightforward. That game's in a dome. Weatherman Sam, by the way, bye week for Weatherman Sam. No weather to really report. Good timing for the Weatherman Sam bye week, because we're heading into the time of the year where Weatherman Sam really is going to have to be on his A game, but basically no weather at all to report today. There's maybe some precipitation in the Packers-Bears, Seahawks 49ers games, but nothing of concern. I don't even want to mention it because I don't want to overreact. So bye week for Weatherman Sam. All right, on to the next game. Let's go to the running back ranks here on the TikTok Live, on the YouTube Live. We'll get to the tight end soon as well. Laporta's out this week too, by the way. Talking about the tough tight end landscape. No Kittle, no Laporta. Laporta had like his best game of the season last week. He's out. All right, so we got the Packers and the Bears next. So the Packers come off the bye. They get the stumbling Chicago Bears. The Bears season has really taken a turn for the worse since the Hail Mary. Jordan Love is startable. I prefer Russ, Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, Joe Burrow over him. That's just a few examples. He's startable, though. He hasn't had a game over 20 points since week 6. Not a great start, but an okay start if you need to. Josh Jacobs, the role should be there. The Packers lead the NFL in rushing yards, or they're right behind the Ravens. We got him projected for 65 rushing yards, half a touchdown in this game. Definitely startable. In most leagues, should be started. Jaden Reed and these receivers are an absolute fantasy headache. Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, all going to rotate. Jaden Reed's definitely the best option by a decent bit, the highest ceiling. I would still argue Romeo Doubs maybe actually has the safest floor. He's playing the most, and he's leading this group in targets over the last month. But Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks are really the thorn in both of their sides. In any given week, it could be Watson, it could be Wicks that has the big game. Makes it very tough for fantasy. The Packers are 6-point favorites in Chicago in this one, and I think the sneaky guy that is a very good start this week is Tucker Kraft. Luke Musgrave is still out. He just got surgery on his ankle. It's unclear if Luke Musgrave is going to be back the entire season. There hasn't been that much reporting on the Luke Musgrave stuff. I had to do some digging just to see if he was even going to play this week, and he's not. He's on a scooter right now. Tucker Kraft, meanwhile, he's had at least 3 catches in 3 straight, scored in 2 of those. Now he gets the Bears. The Bears are allowing the 3rd most yards per game to tight ends. The Bears have allowed several big games to tight ends. Austin Hooper last week had 64 yards. If you include Hunter Henry, they went over 80 yards in that game. At tight end, the week before that, McBride and Elijah Higgins, they combined for almost 70 yards, 5 catches. Zach Ertz had 7 catches, 77 yards. Evan Ingram went 10 for 102. I mean, they've allowed a lot of yards to the tight ends. I think Tucker Kraft is playable this week. Him versus Taysom Hill, I think, is close this week. So a lot of difficult start sits, I think, on the Packers side of the ball. On the Bears side of the ball, not too much different. I think DeAndre Swift is a good start this week. I won't be surprised if we see an even bigger role for Swift. A little bit of wide range of outcomes for the Bears offense this week. They changed offensive coordinators. The reports are they're going to simplify the offense a little bit. That's not always a good thing. It hopefully can't get worse, but I feel like at times throughout this whole season, it can always get worse, guys. It can always get worse. As bad as it has been, it can get worse. I think it probably gets a little bit better for the Bears in this one, but Packers coming off the bye is a really tough spot for the Bears to be here. I do like DeAndre Swift, though. He's playing over 2/3 of the snaps. I think he could get, potentially season high usage in this game with a new play caller. Roshan Johnson, I think at worst, he's going to vulture some goal line touches. But other than that, it's going to be almost all DeAndre Swift in this one. Packers are about middle of the pack, first running back. So Swift, not a must start, but I'd call him a good start this week. Obviously, we're not starting Caleb Williams. And then the receivers. We have all 3 of these receivers in the Walter Picks app. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, guys, come to the YouTube Live. On the YouTube Live, I'm sharing screen to the Bears projections, which I can't do on TikTok. The link is right in the TikTok bio. We're looking at Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, all ranked back to back to back. If I switch to the wide receiver ranks here quick on the TikTok Live, you'll see it here too. All of these receivers are tough to decipher. I personally like Odunze and DJ Moore the most. I think Keenan's floor is the lowest. I also like these 2 guys the most rest of season. They all have an intriguing ceiling. The Bears are 6-point underdogs in this game. They're going to have to throw. To me, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, they just have the highest ceiling with their potential roles as deep threats, where Keenan Allen's just not going to be used deep down the field. So that's the Bears. Really, it's just DeAndre Swift that's a good start on this offense today. And then Odunze, DJ Moore, I think they're interesting dart throws. Now, I personally would not risk it with Keenan in this game. Packers probably going to win this one. 6-point favorites. I definitely would take the Packers there. All right, on to the next game. This is a great one. Again, we're going to get to comments here coming up. We're going every single game. We're going game by game right now. Let me know in the comments which ranks you want to see next. Yeah, QB ranks. I got you with the QB ranks. Let me pull those up. Good game to talk through QB ranks as we talk through the Ravens Steelers. So this is to me, one of the games you should be most excited about this week. The Ravens versus the Steelers. Ravens are 3-point favorites. The Ravens have had some very exciting games this season. They are built for shootouts because their offense is unstoppable. They have the MVP, Lamar Jackson. They have the greatest rushing running back of all time, Derrick Henry. Not saying he's the greatest right now necessarily, but he is the greatest rusher of all time, just statistically. But they're playing the Steelers, and the Steelers might have the best defense in the NFL. They're at least in the conversation with the Chiefs, with the Chargers, with the Eagles, maybe a few other teams. But the Steelers are up there, man. They've allowed the 2nd fewest points per game to quarterbacks this season. Lamar Jackson has a losing record in his career versus the Steelers. Very tough to find a team he has a losing record against. I think he's 1-3 or 1-4. He's been hurt for a few of the matchups. Obviously, you're starting Lamar Jackson, but of all weeks to be concerned about Lamar, it's probably this one. The Steelers have had a decent formula of stopping Lamar in the past. The Steelers just did very well versus Jaden Daniels, too. He had his worst rushing performance of the season last week. Kind of nice for the Steelers to get to play Jaden Daniels and Lamar back-to-back. Somewhat similar game planning there. Obviously, you still have to start Derrick Henry, but it's a tough matchup for him. You still kind of have to start Zay Flowers, but it's a tough matchup for him, too. Zay Flowers versus Tyreek Hill, super close. I personally think I lean towards Zay Flowers there, but it's extremely close. I wouldn't knock you for going Tyreek Hill in that situation. We'll get to the Dolphins here in a second. Mark Andrews, I think Andrews is a bench. I think you should bench Mark Andrews in a lot of leagues this week. And the reason I think Mark Andrews is a bench, if I go back to my high-level takes here on the TikTok Live, pull the tight end ranks here on the YouTube Live quick. The reason I think Mark Andrews is a bench is I think there's probably someone on the waiver wire I like more. I think Taysom Hill and Tucker Kraft are better options than Mark Andrews this week. Mark Andrews coming off by far his best game of the season, but that was without Isaiah Likely. We called this one last week on this live stream. I said, how many weeks? I think this was Thursday, actually, not this live stream, the Thursday live stream. How many weeks could you go into a week and confidently say Mark Andrews is going to play over 75% of the snaps this week? That was the only time all season we could feel that way, other than week 1 where we would have been wrong because we didn't really understand what the role was going to end up being for Mark Andrews heading into the season. But now Isaiah Likely's back. This increased playing time was because Isaiah Likely was out. I don't think there's any reason to believe that now that Likely's back, he's not going to slide right back into that role he was in, which sends Mark Andrews back to 55% snap share and sends Mark Andrews back to games where he's getting 11% target share, 15% target share. Last week was the only game all season Mark Andrews was over 20% target share. He had 18.8 points, 6 catches, 68, and a touchdown. He's now had he's averaging a touchdown per game over his last 5 games. He's had a good stretch. But the Steelers defense has been very good versus tight ends. They ranked 10th best versus tight ends. Brock Bowers had a good game versus them. Zach Ertz had 7 points last week. There's only been a few tight ends over 10 points. I think the floor is a bit lower than people realize for Mark Andrews this week. Certainly some spots where I would start him. I'm starting TJ Hawkinson, Hunter Henry, Tucker Kraft, Taysom Hill, Evan Ingram, Pitts, Njoku, Bowers, Kelsey all over Mark Andrews this week. And then no one else in this team can be started. Deontay Johnson revenge game here, by the way. Impossible to start Deontay Johnson. You got to think they get him a little bit more involved in this game, but it could be something like the Jahan Dotson role that we saw on Thursday night where he gets the first catch of the game and makes one bad drop, never to be seen again. Likely himself, obviously not startable in this game, coming off the injury. All right, that's the Ravens side of the ball. I think the Steelers win this one, and I think this is a really good spot for their passing attack. The Ravens secondary has been crushed all season. The Steelers are likely to be trailing or in a close game here. Russ projects as a top 5 quarterback option. There's not very many quarterbacks I want more than Russ this week. I think between him and Justin Herbert, I personally lean Herb over Russ. I think the ceiling for Justin Herbert's higher, but the projection for Russell Wilson is higher in the Walter Picks app than it is for Justin Herbert. It's because of this matchup versus the Ravens. It's because of how well Russell Wilson has played over the last few weeks. He does not need that high of volume to have good fantasy games. He's got 6 passing touchdowns in his last 3 games. This is by far the best matchup he's had since being a starter. He's played the Jets, Giants, Commanders so far. He's finished as a top 10 quarterback twice in his 3 games. Now he gets the Ravens. George Pickens is a must-start wide receiver this week. He's been absolutely balling over the last 3 weeks, been over 20 points twice, been a top 5 wide receiver twice, and now he gets his best matchup of the season. The Steelers have had arguably the toughest passing matchup schedule so far this season, and they have maybe the easiest matchup schedule the rest of the season. So definitely expect that to show this week for the Steelers. Jaylen Warren, we had him projected out yesterday, projected him back in this morning. There was reports that he's likely going to play through his injury. He picked up a back injury midweek. Jaylen Warren has had somewhat of a lost season here with injuries. Sounds like he's going to play, though. Definitely makes Najee Harris a little bit worse. The Ravens have been very good versus running backs. Najee Harris is startable, but not a must-start. And then no one else on this team is must-start. I think Mike Williams is an interesting sleeper this week as his role continues to grow. He had the game-winning touchdown in their last game versus the Commanders. He only played 11% of snaps. 9 snaps he played. Got to think that gets closer to 25, 30, maybe even 50% this week. I think Mike Williams' skill set's going to mesh really well with Russ. So, yeah, we have to start Pickens. I think you kind of have to start Russ in a lot of situations. Like some quarterbacks I'm starting Russell Wilson over include Stroud, Bo Nix, Mahomes, Jordan Love, Drake May, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston, Stafford, Goff, Darnold, Rodgers. Tua, Anthony Richardson's going to be starting this week. Definitely starting Russ over him. I'm not going to start him over Burrow, over Purdy, or over Josh Allen. And I'm going Justin Herbert over Russ too. But I think that one's super close. All right, that's the Steelers-Ravens game again. I think the Steelers are an interesting underdog there. 3-point underdog. They're plus 145 to win. I think they got a good chance to win at home if they're able to stop Lamar like they have in the past. All right, on to this Next game here. Let me know in the comments too. You want the tight end ranks? I got you. Hop over to the tight end ranks here on the YouTube live as well. Let's hop over to the Vikings Titans game next. The Vikings are 6-point favorites in Tennessee. We got Will Levis versus Sam Darnold. Absolute banger of a game. This game belongs on Thursday Night Football. Justin Jefferson obviously must start regardless of the matchup. Jay Jett has had a down game last week. Only 9.8 points. His first game all season under 10 points. Still had a 24% target share, though. Still had 9 targets. No reason to get panicked, I think, about Justin Jefferson. Aaron Jones picked up an injury last week, but then came back into the game. He will play this week. He is a good start. He's a 6-point favorite. And he got hurt last week. Still had 17 carries and 3 targets. Still had 20 opportunities with only a 52% snap share. That's probably going to be higher this week. Cam Akers is an interesting sleeper. He clearly is the running back 2 on this team now. Sam Darnold, not a guy I want to start. Sam Darnold's really been struggling. Definitely last week he struggled versus the Jags. He had 241 yards, but I think he threw 3 picks. He had 3 picks versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, 6.3 yards per attempt. Brutal stuff for Darnold last week. Not a terrible spot for him to bounce back here. And then TJ Hawkinson, he's definitely startable. We saw the role jump up big time for Hawk last week. He was the tight end 5 last week with 15 points, 8 catches, 72 yards. Season high 24% target share. We saw the snap percentage jump up all the way to 46%. It was the same. The snap percentage didn't even go up. It was the targets that went up. There's still room for TJ Hawkinson to get on the field more. Him versus Hunter Henry, I think, is super close. I wouldn't knock you for going Hawk there. I would play Hawk over Andrews personally. I don't think I'd play Hawk over Kraft. I'm not playing Hawk over Taysom Hill. I think Taysom Hill still has a better chance at touchdowns than Hawkinson does. Taysom Hill still has arguably one of the highest ceilings among tight ends. Like really after Kelsey and Bowers maybe, and maybe Njoku, and maybe Pitts. Taysom's right in that conversation in terms of the ceiling. How many tight ends could realistically score 2 touchdowns this week? I mean, Taysom's on that list. He is. He's going to get potentially several goal line carries. We'll talk about Taysom coming up in a little bit, but we've been on him for the past couple of weeks, and I think he's definitely startable again. This week, the floor is a bit scary if the touchdowns aren't there, but I think the ceiling's absolutely there for Taysom Hill. Jordan Addison, not a guy I want to start. Cam Akers, really not a guy I want to start. Vikings defense is a very good option this week, one of the best defenses to start. I skipped over it too when we talked about the Lions, but the Lions defense, also a very good one to start. I also think that the Packers defense, coming off the bye against a new offensive coordinator and the struggling Bears, kind of an interesting sleeper defense there as well. On the Titans side of the ball, Calvin Ridley, he's the best option on this Titans offense. He's the most underrated receiver, one of the most underrated receivers in fantasy right now. You look at the role for Calvin Ridley, he's in one of the best wide receiver roles, just volume-wise. We just think about the volume for a second. Ignore the name, ignore the team, ignore the player. There are only 2 wide receivers in the NFL that are getting more air yards than Calvin Ridley. He's been, I think, over the last 5 games, arguably in the best role volume-wise in the NFL. He's got multiple games going over a 35% target share. He had a 39% target share last week. He's been over 120 air yards in 5 consecutive games. He's seeing over a third of his team's air yards. Last week, guys, he saw 78% of the Titans' air yards. I mean, that is insane. That is like Malik Neighbors type usage here for Calvin Ridley. He has no competition for targets. Tyler Boyd's been battling injuries all season. He's questionable this week. It sounds like he's going to play. But he gets the Vikings a good matchup on paper here for Ridley. I think there's a real ceiling case here for Ridley this week. Definitely interested in starting him. Levis, you can't start. Tony Pollard, startable. Tajay Spears is also startable. Tajay Spears does lower the floor and ceiling for Tony Pollard a decent bit. He took 46% of the snaps last week, a third of the carries, and he saw 13% target share. He ran a route, too, on 43% of the passing attempts. He's taking like 40% of the playing time away from Tony Pollard. I don't think we see Tony Pollard in this massive workhorse role the rest of the season with Spears back. Definitely, lowers him a decent bit in the rankings and the projections. But both these guys should catch passes, and they're the 2 best offensive players they have on this team after Calvin Ridley, and then there's a massive drop. So this offense is going to run through Ridley, Pollard, and Spears. All of them are startable for that reason. The latest on Tony Pollard back, added to the injury report late. Similar thing to the Jaylen Warren news we were just looking at. The Vikings are going to win in this game, almost definitely. 6-point favorites in Tennessee. On to the next one. Let me know in the comments too which rankings list you want to see next. Wide receivers, I got you. Hop to the wide receiver ranks. We're going to get to the start sits, I promise. We're going to get to literally hundreds. My goal is thousands. That's a little unrealistic, but we're going to get to hundreds of start sits on this live stream. Right now we're talking through every single game. We'll talk through every single player in every single game. We've talked through the Jags lines. RIP to Doug Peterson. We talked through the Packers and Bears. We talked through the Ravens, Steelers, some great games. Vikings, Titans, we just talked through. We're on to the Raiders and the Dolphins now. The Dolphins, 7.5-point favorites at home. Third straight week here. Excuse me. Bless you. Thank you. Third straight week here where the Dolphins need to win. This is a must-win game. And they lost one of those games. They won the must-win game versus the Rams last week, but they were fighting to keep their playoff hopes alive here. You got to think that this is a good spot for the Dolphins to get back on track. They're 7.5-point favorites at home. Devon Achane, absolute must start. He has about as high of a ceiling as you could possibly have for running back. Devon Achane played like 70% of snaps last week. There was the most high snap percentage he's had since week 4. Mostert was healthy in this game. Jalen Wright was healthy in this game. 70% snap share. The outcome wasn't great, only 10 points, but he had 5 catches and he had 12 carries, 55% of the carries, 18% target share. In this role, Achane's a smash start. Tyreek Hill, I still think you got to start Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is in one of these spots in fantasy. Talk about sometimes over the course of the season. The worst types of guys to have in fantasy are the guys that you cannot drop and you cannot start. Those are the worst. Mark Andrews was in that category for a little while this season. Guys like Travis Etienne earlier this season. There's at times there's these guys you can't drop them and you can't start them. Tyreek Hill's situation is different. Tyreek's situation is you can't bench him and you can't really trade him or drop him. Like you have to start Tyreek every week. You kind of have to start him. He's out there playing 88% of the snaps. He's out there running a route on basically every single passing play. He's dealing with a torn wrist ligament, supposedly. A very weird situation there. He said that it got aggravated when he was detained before the week 1 game. Week 1 was his best game. I mean, it's a little odd. It doesn't line up to me perfectly. He had 7 catches, 130 yards and a touchdown in that game. If you guys remember all the way back to week 1, he should have had a second long touchdown in that game. Just missed a second long touchdown. He would have had over 35 points in that game, but we have not seen Tyreek Hill score more than 14 fantasy points since week 1. He's averaging only 11 this season. He ranks 41st in fantasy points per game among wide receivers this season. This is a bounce back spot for Tyreek. His props have him over 60 yards. I think you got to start Tyreek in a lot of situations this week. We were just talking earlier in the live. Tyreek versus Zay Flowers, super close. I think it's really, really close. Let's do that comparison really quick because I think this one's like extremely close. Both don't have the best matchups. Zay has a much tougher matchup than Tyreek. Zay's obviously been much better this season. I think I would argue that Tyreek's ceiling is higher and Zay's floor is a bit better. I think I would lean Zay here, but it's close. Definitely a close call. All right, keeping with the Dolphins here. So Mostert didn't get a carry last week. It was Jalen Wright. But then after the game, they said that it was more game planning than it was game plan specific last week is what they said. They thought Jalen Wright's skill set was better for that individual game. So I do think Raheem Mostert gets some carries this week. And in this matchup as a 7.5-point favorite at home, all of these running backs have a decent chance at touchdowns. Jalen Wright's an interesting sleeper himself if his role ends up continuing to grow. One of these two running backs, Wright or Mostert, is going to end up being a good sleeper this week. They're not going to give Devon Achane 100% of the snaps. Obviously, there's going to be some type of rotation. This is a good spot for the running backs. Raiders have not been good versus running backs this season. Jalen Waddle, interesting flex option. He had 57 yards, 3 catches, 57 yards last week. That was his most yards since week 1. But he still has not been over 10 points since week 1. I mean, really not a guy you can really trust starting. Jalen Waddle falls, I think, into that category of you can't start and you can't drop. Ridley or Zay Flowers? He had Zay over Ridley. I'd go Judy over Taysom. Let's keep going here, though. We're going to get to those games. On the Raiders side of the ball, There was some speculation. Maybe Desmond Ridder is going to be the starting QB out of the bye. Nope. They got cold feet on that one. Don't blame them. I mean, Desmond Ridder is not going to be fun to watch. Please keep Desmond Ridder off our TV screens. Please keep Gardner Minshew in there. At least Gardner Minshew can complete passes. Like, Gardner Minshew is capable of completing passes. Some of them. That's all we need for Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. Gardner Minshew, well off the fantasy radar himself, but Bowers is the tight end 2 this week, even in a tough matchup versus the Dolphins. Bowers ranks number 2 in catches, number 2 in yards, number 2 in fantasy points, number 2 in targets. Bowers is in an incredible role. He is at least somewhat matchup proof. We have not seen an extremely low floor in any game, really, this season from Bowers. So he's a must start unless you have Travis Kelce. Jacoby Myers is definitely in an interesting spot in this one too. The Dolphins have been pretty good versus the receivers this season, but Jacoby Myers is the clear wide receiver 1 on this team. Before the bye against the Bengals, 8 catches, 105 yards. You saw a 35% target share in that game. Back-to-back games over a 25% target share for Jacoby Myers now. Even against the Chiefs, he had 17 points. And this is one of the better defenses, better secondaries in the NFL. Jacoby's definitely startable this week. Top 30 wide receiver option this week. RB rankings. Yeah, I got you guys with the running back rankings. Speaking of the running back ranks, do not start any of these Raiders running backs. Alexander Mattison is probably going to lead the backfield in touches. Again, that's about as gross as it gets across the league. He had 3.6 points versus the Bengals, played 40% of snaps, only 42% of the carries. He had 9 carries for 36 yards. You look at this Raiders team. If you are frustrated, if you're an NFL fan, you're frustrated with your running backs like I am for the Patriots. If you are a fantasy football fan like all of you are on this live stream right now, shout out to everybody in this live, and you're frustrated with the efficiency of your running back, just you'll feel better. Just go look at Alexander Mattison and Zamir White, see what they've done this season. Mattison has 1 game over 4 yards per carry this season. He's averaging 3.3 yards per carry. That ranks 56th in the NFL. In week 8, he had 1.1 yards per carry. And Zamir White, he hasn't been much better. We got Zamir White projected behind Amir Abdullah in this one. Zamir White is at 2.9 yards per carry. Look at these yards per carry numbers. He had negative yards per carry in week 8, 1.7 in week 9. He's just struggling to get a yard on these carries. Amir Abdullah was used in the receiving game too last game. 3 catches, 14 yards. He played 50% of the snaps. He was playing ahead of Zamir White, stealing work from Madison. This is an absolute dumpster fire for fantasy. Do not start any of these running backs. Myers, Bowers, these are the only 2 guys you can start. And the Dolphins are going to win this game. They're 7.5-point favorites. They need to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. This is a big game for them. Speaking of needing to win, let's go to this Rams-Pats game. I like this Rams offense a lot. This week, the Patriots defense, they have some good players, but as a group, they're average at best this season. Kyron Williams is about as good of a chance at a touchdown as any player in the NFL this week. He has had 2 down games in a row, under 12 fantasy points and back-to-back, but he has not had under 10 points a single game this entire season. He ranks 8th in fantasy points per game, and he's arguably in the best running back role in the league. He's not coming off the field. He's coming off the field like for 1 drive. Blake Corum will come in for 1 drive or 1 series, and then that's it. He's been over 90% of the snaps in back-to-back weeks. His snap percentage ranks number 1 in the NFL. He's played the most snaps in the NFL at running back. He had an 83% rush share last week. That's back-to-back weeks over 80%. And he had 6 targets last week too. If he gets that type of target volume, watch out for Kyron Williams. He hasn't scored in 3 weeks. That probably changes this week. Obviously, you're starting Kyron. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, they're both top 10 wide receiver options in this matchup versus the Pats. I like Puka Nacua more than Kupp. We've seen it now in 2 of the last 3 games. Puka got ejected 2 games ago, so we're going to throw that one out. So the 2 games since Puka and Kupp have both been back, Puka's been better. He's seeing more targets than Kupp. Both very good options, though. And then Stafford, he's startable in Superflex leagues. There's a lot of QBs I prefer over Stafford, so I'm not going to call him a must start. I'd play Jameis over him. I think I'd play Geno over him. I think there's an even argument for Drake May over him. We're about to get to him in a second. Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson. I start all those guys over Stafford this week. I think this is likely a pretty run-heavy game script for the Rams. The Rams are 4-point favorites in New England. None of the other Rams players are really fantasy relevant at all. The Rams defense, though, they're in play this week. Top 5 defense option there. On the Patriots side of the ball, Drake May, he's got Patriots fans with feeling some optimism. As a Pats fan, you got to hope Drake May continues to look good and they continue to lose games because they're not real contenders, obviously, this season. We need as good of a pick as possible as Pats fans. So hopefully Drake May continues to impress and lose at the same time. Not an easy balance to strike for Drake May, obviously. They're coming off a win versus the Bears. That game was not close. The Bears just completely imploding. The Rams are a much better offense than the Bears. A slightly worse defense than the Bears. Drake May has been running. This is part of the reason Drake May is startable. If you look at just the full games that Drake May has played, he ranks top 3 in quarterback rushing yards per game. If you include some of the games he didn't play fully, he's at number 6 at 40 yards per game. But he has a real rushing floor and ceiling, Drake May. Makes him kind of intriguing for fantasy. We haven't really seen too many rushing QBs versus the Rams this season. Kyler Murray had 59 rushing yards back in week 2. That's really the only rushing QB they played. Definitely an interesting rushing opportunity for Drake May this week as an underdog. Ramondre Stevenson, he's startable. He's the only running back on the Pats getting any reasonable amount of work. 70% snap share last week, 57% of the rushes, 20 carries. I think he got more, higher percentage of that from the running backs too. Drake May's getting some carries as well. Only 1 target, but he's startable for sure. I think I'd probably start him over the Titans running backs this week, over Tony Pollard and over Tajay Spears. Hunter Henry, he's startable as well. It was Austin Hooper last week. Hunter Henry only had 2 points. If Austin Hooper is going to have that big of a role again, there's an extremely low floor for Henry. But the 4 weeks before that, Hunter Henry had at least 9.5 fantasy points. He's been consistently, most of this season, Drake May's favorite target. He still had a 17% target share last week too, just didn't come through. Only had 1 catch. So he's startable this week for sure. Him versus Mark Andrews, I actually think I'd lean Hunter Henry over Mark Andrews. Kayshon Boutte, he's an interesting sleeper this week. He did not come off the field for the Pats really last week. 97% snap share. He ran a route on 100% of the passing plays. He's over 90% route participation in back-to-back weeks. Boutte is the best Patriots receiver. He's their most reliable receiver, the guy getting the most playing time, and he's the guy getting the most air yards too. He's over 100 air yards in back-to-back games. So definitely an interesting sleeper in deeper leagues. I think his props are interesting this week. Kayshon Boutte, we were on his props back on London time when they played the Jags back in week 7. He did that in 1 catch, had 33 yards in that game. Has only scored 1 touchdown this season. But yeah, Boutte definitely the receiver, I think, to start amongst the Pats. Demario Douglas, slightly different role for him out of the slot. Maybe arguably a better floor. He only played 42% of snaps last week. That probably goes up this week. They just cut Tyquan Thornton on this team. Kendrick Bourne supposedly going to play this week. He didn't play at all in their last game. I think he was a healthy scratch basically in that game. Very intriguing to see how this wide receiver rotation, continues to form. But Boutte's the only guy that I would consider a sleeper. Douglas, a PPR sleeper in deeper leagues maybe too, but neither guy you really want to start in fantasy. The Rams are going to win this game, at least I hope so, as a Pats fan. All right, the Colts and the Jets. Jets are 4-point favorites at home in this one. The Jets are favored every week. It feels like the Jets are favored every single week, and that just hasn't been how it's gone for the Jets. A good spot here for them versus the Colts. Jonathan Taylor absolutely needs to be started. Anthony Richardson is back in the lineup. It only took a couple of games of watching Joe Flacco struggle to completely shift course and put Anthony Richardson back in there. They looked bad with Joe Flacco out there the past couple of weeks. I still think Joe Flacco is better for the Colts to win games than Anthony Richardson. Does it really matter though? Because they're not going to win the Super Bowl. Maybe they could sneak into the playoffs. And they got to see what they have in Anthony Richardson. Like if you're the Colts, you need to either figure out that Anthony Richardson sucks and move on, or develop him and figure out that he's good. It's one of those two. You don't want to be in the Daniel Jones situation where you extend the wrong guy. And there's definitely still a ceiling here for Anthony Richardson. He has obviously the physical tools. He's arguably the most athletic quarterback of all time, at least in terms of combine numbers. So yeah, JT is a must start. I think Anthony Richardson starting is bad for every single one of these players for fantasy purposes. The problem for Anthony Richardson this season has been the passing inconsistency and the passing accuracy. He's completing 44% of his passes this season. Let me go to the QB ranks here. We got Anthony Richardson way down. Number 21 quarterback this week. 44% of his passes. His air yards per attempt ranks number 1. So he's airing it out deeper down the field than every other quarterback in the NFL. But he's not been connecting. 44% completion percentage, only 7 yards per attempt. His quarterback rating rates 50th in the NFL. a 67 quarterback rating. I mean, he's going to have to complete more than half his passes to be a capable fantasy option and starting quarterback in the league. We have not seen Anthony Richardson score more than 13 fantasy points since week 1. He is not a starter. He should probably be on the waiver wire in most leagues. The rushing is obviously there. The ceiling is obviously there, which is not great for JT. There's definitely a much bigger threat of Richardson stealing rushing touchdowns away from JT than Joe Flacco. There's also going to be less pass volume for JT than there was with Joe Flacco. But this is still a good spot for JT. The Jets defense has been average, really below average since the coaching change. Josh Downs gets knocked down a decent bit in projections with a rich back. He's startable, but not a must start. I would say borderline not even a good start in this game, and the target volume should be there. We have projected just over 10 points this week. I think some difficult starts this with Josh Downs. Michael Pittman is not startable. You cannot start Michael Pittman. A bit of a lost season here for Pittman, playing through injuries. Now he's got Anthony Richardson back, which is not good for him. He didn't play last week. He's back this week. You can't start Pittman right now. Absolutely not. Adonai Mitchell, he's well off the radar now too with Pittman back. He looked good last week with Pittman out. I still think the Colts' best 3 here are Downs, Pittman, Adonai Mitchell, but I'm not sure that's how they're going to play it. Alec Pierce has had a good season. He's going to continue to sort of split that wide receiver 3 role with Adonai Mitchell, and hopefully they just get Ashton Doolin off the field. All right, that's the Colts. So JT's a must start. No one else in this team is a must start, and Josh Downs is, I think, the next best guy to consider. On the Jets side of the ball, must-win game here for the Jets. They're on a bit of a skid. The defense has been horrible since the coaching firing of Robert Saleh. Breece Hall is in a really good spot in this game. A get-right spot here for Breece Hall. Really a get-right spot for this whole Jets offense. You know, arguably another one. The Cardinals defense has not been good this season, and they did not do great versus the Cardinals last week. I think this might even be a slightly better matchup, though, for some of these guys. We have not seen Breece Hall score since week 7. He probably gets in the end zone today as a 4-point favorite at home versus a bad defense. And the role for Breece Hall is still incredible. He's playing over 80% of the snaps. He's seeing significant work on the ground and through the air. Last week, only 10 carries. That was his fewest in over a month. But he still was on the field over 80% of the snaps. And he was effective with those carries, too. He was averaging, 5.2 yards per carry, and the Jets only gave him 10 carries. I mean, horrible play calling there for the Jets on a day where the offense was really struggling. I think they lean on Breece much more in this game, probably gets back to 15 plus, maybe even 20 plus, like we were seeing earlier in the season. I'm not panicked on Breece Hall, especially this week. I think he's a must start. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, both projecting as top 10 wide receivers. I was wrong about Garrett Wilson with the Devontae Adams trade. I'll take the L there. I'm going to be wrong about things over the course of the season. And I pride myself on taking L's when it makes sense to do so. And Garrett Wilson, he had a bad game last week. Only 9 points, 5 catches. But the target share has been there for the most part for Garrett Wilson. Only 18% last week. He's now been out-targeted by Devontae Adams. I think it's at 3 straight games. But we're still seeing Garrett Wilson eclipse 30% target shares alongside Devontae Adams. Together, they can get over 60 or 70% of the team's targets. I mean, it is a very consolidated offense here between Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and Breece Hall. That's 80%, sometimes more of the offense. So both Garrett Wilson and Adams, both projecting as top 10 wide receivers, both need to be started in this matchup. I'll go back to wide receiver rankings here. If you guys are just tuning in, guys, hit the like button. We are just getting started here. We got several hours to go. We're going to get to so many start-sit questions. We're going to talk about every single player in every single game. We're just getting started. Look forward to these lives all week, guys. It is going to be a fantastic, fantastic week. All right, we just talked through the Jets, Colts. I think the Jets win this one also. So far, I think I'm with all the favorites outside of the Steelers. I like the Lions. I like the Packers. I think the Steelers are an interesting underdog. I think the Vikings will beat the Titans, the Dolphins, the Rams, and the Jets. On to the next window of games here. It's heating up as we go through to the Browns Saints are next. This Browns Saints game is going to be a very, very fun one. I'm very excited about this one. There's a lot of different angles to this Browns offense this week. A lot of offensive production, I think, coming for the Browns today. The Saints defense, I think, is one of the sneaky worst defenses in the NFL right now. And it didn't really show last week. Because the Falcons weren't able to get in the end zone passing wise. Kirk Cousins, though, he threw for 306 yards. And Bijan had a great game. I think the Falcons had close to 500 total yards versus the Saints last week, 306 passing yards, but no touchdowns for Kirk last week. He did throw one pick as well. And then they played Bryce Young the week before that. I think James has a really good ceiling in this game coming off the bye. I like Nick Chubb to bounce back this week as well. I definitely think Nick Chubb is startable. Let me go to the running back ranks here. I really want to start Nick Chubb this week. I think there's a good story you can tell yourself about Nick Chubb bouncing back. We've seen Nick Chubb now play in 3 games this season. The first game he scored, he's been really inefficient in all 3. But guys, look at these matchups for Nick Chubb. Obviously, Nick Chubb coming off, a brutal injury. So he's been overcoming that and sort of getting reacclimated. He also has played 3 top 4 running defenses. The Bengals, the Ravens, and the Chargers all ranked top 4 versus running backs in terms of fantasy points allowed. He's been really inefficient. 2.7 yards per carry. I mean, this looks like what we were looking at with Alexander Madison and Zamir White. But now he gets the Saints. And the Saints have been one of the worst defenses versus running backs this season. So he's going from the toughest running back schedule, really, he could possibly have, basically, in his first 3 games. Now he gets the Saints, who are allowing 4.8 yards per carry. That's 5th worst in the NFL. And really, since week 3, there's not been a defense worse versus running backs. We saw Saquon Barkley absolutely smash. We saw Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier combined over 20 points. Kareem Hunt had 20 points. Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker, and Javonte Williams, they combined for basically 1 million points back in week 6 and week 7. And J.K. Dobbins, he had almost 20 points. Chuba Hubbard had 20 points. Bijan Robinson had 30 points last week. I think there's a 25-plus point ceiling here for Nick Chubb. I think multiple touchdown ceiling for Nick Chubb. I think 100-plus rushing yard upside here for Nick Chubb. And he's had the volume, too. This is part of the reason I like Nick Chubb this week. He had way more volume out of the gates than I expected. He's had back-to-back games with at least 15 carries. He's going to get at least 15 carries in this game versus the Saints, who are one of the worst defenses in the league versus running backs. So, yeah, I like Nick Chubb in this one. I think the Browns win this game. The Browns are 1.5-point favorites. It's a close spread. I think the Browns are much better than the Saints. I think the offense has a good chance here. Obviously, Winston, a volatile quarterback, he could easily throw 4 interceptions in this game. This is a revenge game, though, for Jameis Winston. An exciting one here for Jameis Winston. Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, both good wide receiver options this week. Not must start, but I would say good starts. Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy versus Josh Downs. I think that's super close. Tillman has been on fire. His last 3 games, Tillman is a guy you want in your starting lineup. It's 3 straight games over 18 fantasy points. 3 straight games with at least 6 catches in 75 receiving yards. And the Saints secondary without Lattimore is not scary. This game is projected to be close. So, yeah, Cedric Tillman's definitely playable. And I think Jerry Jeudy is an even deeper sleeper, an even bigger sleeper, a more true sleeper, I think is the right way to say it, than Cedric Tillman. I think we know what Cedric Tillman is. People are aware of Cedric Tillman now. I feel like Judy's not getting enough interest, though, as a sleeper this week. Back-to-back weeks, we've seen Jeudy over 12.5 points. Back-to-back weeks, we've seen Jeudy have at least 5 catches in 70 receiving yards. He's not coming off the field. He's seen 19 targets in his last 2 games. He's probably going over 20% target share in this game as well. I think Jerry Jeudy profiles on paper as the number 1 receiver on this team prior to what we'd seen from Cedric Tillman. I still think both these guys have a ceiling in this game. They're pretty close. I think that Jeudy is just closer to Tillman than what I think most people are realizing right now. I still would prefer Tillman just slightly over Jeudy, but it's close, man. I do think it's close. James Cook or T. Higgins? Yeah, I think I'd probably go T. Higgins with James Cook playing the Chiefs. We'll get to that Bills-Chiefs game here coming up. That's definitely a very exciting one as well. So I want to start Nick Chubb. I think Tillman and Jeudy are decent starts this week. I think Winston has an interesting ceiling, but in season-long leagues, there's a lot of quarterbacks I'd prefer. We'll get to the DraftKings lineup, though, coming up in a second. Elijah Moore, he's also a sleeper. I think we do got to at least touch on Elijah Moore because Elijah Moore's his target shares have been there too. He's got 21 targets, guys, in his last 2 games. He's playing every single snap too. I mean, this is a pretty consolidated team. We know what to expect here. It's going to be Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and Tillman, and Njoku, and Chubb. That's the offense. And Njoku is a good start, really a must start in most leagues. If you don't have Kelsey, you don't have Bowers, you're starting David Njoku. And can Jameis Winston really support all of these guys? I mean, no. I don't think he'll support all 4 of these guys plus Nick Chubb. But I think at least 2 of the 3 of these pass catchers will end up having good weeks. And at tight end, not easy to find a good week, I don't think, this week. I'm out on Mark Andrews. Kittle's out. Laporta's out. We got some bye weeks this week. McBride is on bye. I mean, it's a tough week at tight end. So Njoku's a good option for sure. The Saints have been average versus tight ends this season. I think the Browns defense also kind of an intriguing option. All right, let's go to the Saints side of the ball. Alvin Kamara. Obviously starting him. This wide receiver room continues to be one of the worst wide receiver rooms I've ever seen in the history of the NFL, at least my time covering the NFL over the last 8 years. Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Guys, don't start him. Don't start Scantling. I couldn't be more out on Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I'm ready to be burned by Marquez Valdes-Scantling. 3 catches, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns last week. He was the wide receiver 2. And the skill set does kind of mesh well. With Derek Carr, he can play that Rashid Shaheed role to some extent decently. Because he had 3 targets. He had 3 targets. This was the first game all season that Scantling has had more than 1 catch. I mean, the floor is 0 points here. So just be aware of the floor. If you're going to trot out Marquez Valdes-Scantling in your fantasy lineup, prepare for the potential outcome of 0 fantasy points. I have no interest in that. Like, absolutely none. I'd rather start Elijah Moore over him, for example, who we were just looking at. He's definitely available. If you're thinking about Scantling, not interested in Scantling. But, I mean, you look at the receiver room, who's going to catch passes? Him, Cedric Wilson, Mason Tipton. And this is part of the reason Taysom Hill is startable again, guys. Kamara and Taysom Hill are the 2 best weapons on this offense. That's why Kamara projects so well, even in a somewhat difficult matchup. But Taysom Hill, guys, definitely startable. He had 7 points last week, which might not sound like a lot, but that's actually a decent floor for Taysom because we're really starting Taysom for the ceiling like we saw in week 9 when he scored a rushing touchdown. He's getting receiving work and rushing work. Back-to-back weeks with at least 35 receiving yards, back-to-back weeks with at least 14 rushing yards. And he has a good chance to get some goal line work. There's no Jamal Williams again in this game, no Kendre Miller again in this game. He had 2 targets last week. He cashed his prop for us on the first play. A 10% target share. He ran 13 routes, 23 snaps. Taysom's definitely an intriguing tight end option for those desperate. Derrick Henry anytime TD. Yeah, that's a pretty good take basically every single week so far this season. All right, that's the Browns Saints. I think the Browns take this one. I'm believing in Jameis in this revenge game. All right, on to the Seahawks 49ers game. This is always a fun battle between the Seahawks 49ers. These games typically end up getting crazy in division here. Geno Smith leads the NFL in passing attempts. You did hear me right there. We are in 2024. We are in week 11. And Geno Smith leads the NFL in passing attempts. He leads the NFL in passing yards. And I don't want to overreact to that because whoever leads the NFL in passing yards, like this is just a volume stat. He leads the NFL in passing attempts, so he leads the NFL in passing yards. Not that crazy. But DK Metcalf's back this week. So Geno is startable. I think in a lot of spots, you can't start Geno Smith. Let me hop over to the QB ranks again here quick. I'm not starting him in any of my leagues because I prefer Russell Wilson, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, Drake May. I would start over Geno. But I think all those are relatively close. I would start Geno over Kirk Cousins, over Jameis Winston, over Jared Goff, over Sam Darnold, over Rodgers. Geno definitely startable in some leagues and a must start in Superflex. Kenneth Walker is a must start this week. Hasn't been over 15 points since week 7. They're coming off the bye this week. Zach Sharp did mix in a decent amount in terms of the receiving work, but Kenneth had a 76% rush share last game. He played 76% of the snaps. That was his most of the season. His last game out, he had his highest snap share of the season. So you're going to want to start Kenneth Walker. The ceiling's definitely still there for Kenneth. DK Metcalf is really a must start in his first game back. Him and JSN, I think, are good starts. Solid wide receiver 2s. Metcalf has wide receiver 1 upside. I think the ceiling for JSN is definitely much lower. With Metcalf back, probably less deep targets, more underneath targets for JSN like we've seen for most of this season. He's coming off an insane game, 38% target share for JSN last game, 7 catches, 180, and 2 TDs. Was the wide receiver 1 before the bye. But that was without Metcalf. But they are underdogs in this game. You got to think the Seahawks continue to throw a lot in this game. They're 6-point underdogs. They lead the NFL in pass attempts. They get Metcalf back. So JSN and Metcalf, good options in this one. The 49ers have been bottom 10 first wide receivers this season in terms of fantasy points allowed. And I don't think Lockett is anything more than a sleeper at this point. We haven't seen a single game over 20 points. For Lockett, he's clearly the 3rd best wide receiver on the team. He is still 32 years old. starting to slow down potentially a little bit. And Zach Sharp, he's a desperation flex option or running back 2 option if you really need one, but not a guy you want to start. Still one of the better handcuffs, though, in the league for sure. And then A.J. Barner, got to give him a quick shout. Noah Fant is out this week. A.J. Barner had 4 catches, 27 yards. He did not really come off the field in the last game. This is a rookie tight end here for the Seahawks. 91% snap percentage, 20% target share. Metcalf didn't play in this game, so I'm not rushing to start A.J. Barner, but definitely feels notable, at least a guy worth mentioning here. And to watch out for with Noah Fant out. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now, guys. We're almost an hour in. Hit the like button. Smash the subscribe button. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. And then come to the YouTube live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. So I'm asking, where's Jalen Hurts on these rankings? He's not on these rankings because these are rankings for the rest of the week. And he already played. Jalen Hurts was right up there at number 1, though, on the Thursday Night Live. If you guys have not downloaded the Walter Picks app yet, I do not know what you're waiting for. You are actively trying not to win your fantasy league if you don't have the free Walter Picks app. It's in the YouTube description. It's in the TikTok bio. I've spent the last 4 years of my life helping build the Walter Picks app. If you're watching live on YouTube, it's on screen right now. It's what I have showing on screen right now on the YouTube live. There are some premium subscriptions in the app that cost money. They're well worth it. Use code SAM. You'll get a free 7-day trial. Do appreciate everyone who's tried out the app. If I don't get your start sit on this live too, I definitely think the Walter Picks app is the best place to go. Happy Sunday, Sam. Got a couple start sits for you. Chubb or Flowers, Kraft or Knox, happy PR. Yeah, so we already talked through both these teams. It's close for me between Chubb and Flowers. Honestly, I'm pretty in on Chubb. This week, I might go Chubb over Flowers. PPR is really close, though. And then I'm going Kraft over Knox pretty easily. Let's do Chubb versus Flowers quick, and then we'll get back to the game by game. I think in PPR, it's going to be Flowers, yeah. I think that Chubb has a better floor, though. Yeah, he does. This is exactly – I think I agree with this analysis here in the Walter Picks app. Chubb has a better floor, a better chance that Chubb goes over 10 points than that Flowers goes over 10 points. But there's a much higher ceiling here for Flowers, especially in PPR leagues. I kind of lean Chubb, honestly. I think the floor for Flowers does scare me a bit in comparison to Chubb this week, but it's close. And then, yeah, I'm going Kraft over Knox for sure. All right, let's go on to the next game here. We'll go to the Falcons, Broncos. Then there's really 3 bangers of games to get to after that. And then we'll get to the start sit, the free player props, the DraftKings slide, and then the start sits, the rest of the live. So we got the Chiefs, Bills coming up next, the Bengals, Chargers, the Texans, Cowboys. Let's go through the Falcons, Broncos here, though, quick. The Falcons, I think Kyle Pitts is a pretty good option this week for the Falcons. A pretty sneaky, like maybe best tight end option this week when it's all said and done. Kyle Pitts gets the Broncos. The Broncos have been very, very good versus receivers this season. Pat Surtain probably going to be lining up against London and Mooney throughout this game. Both these guys project is still startable. I mean, you kind of have to start London regardless of the matchup. We've already seen Drake London have good games in difficult matchups this season. He hasn't had under 10 points. He's had under 10 points once since week 1. You know, very, very scary spot here for the Falcons passing attack, but London needs to be started. And Mooney, I think you can tell yourself he's worth starting if Surtain ends up being on London. But really, I think it's Pitts that has the best matchup on this passing attack this week. The Broncos have not been amazing versus tight ends. Kelsey had 8 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown last week versus the Broncos. That was tight end 1 performance. We saw Brock Bowers smash versus this team too. 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown for Bowers. An even better game than we saw from Kelsey last week. So the 2 best tight ends we've seen play this team both smashed. Andrews likely didn't do much, but I don't think that game was close at all. So yeah, I think Pitts is a pretty good option this week. If you don't have Kelsey, you don't have Bowers, and you don't have Njoku, you got to be starting Kyle Pitts, I think, in all leagues. And then London, you kind of have to start him with the role he's in. Mooney's a good start, not a must start. Bijan obviously is a must start. Bijan is on one of the hottest streaks in the league right now. Bijan has not been under 21 points in 5 consecutive games. He's going for 6 straight. He's on fire where I'm from. 21 points. Every single week for the last 5 weeks. This would be 6 straight weeks that he's done it. He's been incredible this season. Up to number 5 in fantasy points per game. He had not had a single game over 21 points prior to this streak starting. The first 5 weeks of the season, he didn't go over 16.5 points. The touchdown's starting to come. The receiving role starting to come. And the efficiency's really picking up. Some good matchups in there too for Bijan. Ranks running back 6 this week in the Walter Picks app. Let me pull up the running back ranks here. Moving on to the other side of this game. So the Falcons, they are 2-point underdogs in Denver. Falcons are 2-point underdogs in Denver. I think I would take the Falcons, honestly, in this one. Another underdog I like. I like the Steelers as underdogs. I think I like the Falcons as underdogs in this one too. Bo Nix is definitely startable. Projects as a top 8 fantasy quarterback. He's got the rushing. Very sneaky rushing. Gives him a pretty good floor. Good chance at a rushing touchdown. He's had at least 15 points in 3 straight. He's averaging 17 points per game this season. The Falcons have been about average versus quarterbacks. Derek Carr just had 20 points versus them. Baker Mayfield had 24 a few weeks back. Cooper Rush and Dak Prescott combined over 20. So 3 straight weeks we've seen this Falcons defense allow over 20 fantasy points to quarterbacks. Courtland Sutton, definitely startable. Arguably a must start. He's had at least 17 in 3 straight. Tough matchup here versus the Falcons, who are allowing the second fewest points per game to receivers this season. But yeah, I think you kind of have to start Sutton in most leagues. He projects as a top 20 wide receiver. Audric Estime has taken over this backfield for the Denver Broncos. We are starting Estime over Javonte Williams. Estime, an interesting, intriguing option. Last week, he took over the reins. He played 44% of the snaps, by far a season high. He had 61% of the carries, by far a season high, 14 carries. Hadn't had more than 5 carries in a game yet this season. And he had 3.8 yards per carry against the Chiefs. It really wasn't a bad game for him. He played the Chiefs, the toughest running back matchup in the NFL, I think by far. I mean, we have not seen any running backs do anything versus the Chiefs this season. Estime managed 53 rushing yards in his first start. Actually, don't know if he started the game, but his first time leading the backfield. Now he gets the Falcons, an easier matchup for sure. How much pass game work is he going to really get, though? That's a bigger question. Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams probably still going to mix in the pass game and steal some carries too. So Estime is not a must start, but he's definitely the best running back option on this team. Devon Vele, he seems worth mentioning. He had 14 points last week, scored a touchdown, 4 catches. Not a good start. Didn't even hit a 15% target share last week. Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, they're both just fading into the background. These 2 guys that should be exciting young prospects. Getting outplayed by Devon Vele. Yeah, so it's Nix, it's Sutton, it's Estime. These are the only 3 guys you should really be considering. And again, I like the Falcons to upset the Broncos in this one. All right, on to the Chiefs-Bills. This is, for sure the game of the week. This is a potential AFC Championship preview. This is a massive, massive game with massive implications for the NFL playoffs. This Bills-Chiefs game. This really is a playoff game, guys. It's hard to overestimate how massive the bye week is in the NFL. It really is huge. Going all the way back to, the start of the Patriots dynasty, the bye was massive throughout the whole Patriots run. Back then, 2 teams got the bye. Now only 1 team gets a bye. So not only is home field advantage in the playoffs massive, but the bye week is really like the teams that get the bye almost always win their game right out of the bye. And then boom, they're in the AFC Championship, the NFC Championship. Like it's a massive, massive edge. And if the Chiefs win this week, they get the bye. They basically get the bye already. They'll be 2 or 3 games ahead of the Bills. They'll have the head-to-head matchup, win over the Bills, and they have such an easy schedule rest of the way. This is the losable game for the Chiefs, guys. If the Chiefs win this game, they might go undefeated. If the Chiefs win this game, they are getting the 1 seed and they're getting by, and they're going to have a great chance to be in the Super Bowl and win the 3 straight. I mean, there's just such big implications for this game. After this game, they get the Panthers and the Raiders. Maybe they could lose to the Chargers. Maybe they could lose to the Texans or the Steelers, or maybe even the Broncos, who should have beat them last week in Week 18. But last week was a trap game, guys, for the Chiefs, where they should have lost. This is not a trap game versus the Bills. I mean, these games always end up being incredible. The Chiefs are 2.5-point underdogs in Buffalo. Kareem Hunt is an absolute must-start in this game. This is the last big week for Hunt, guys. It sounds like Pacheco's probably going to be back next week versus the Panthers. Pretty good game to choose to come back for Pacheco. And with Pacheco, coming back very soon, this could be the biggest role we see of the season for Kareem Hunt. Why not? With Pacheco waiting in the background. Last week was actually the highest snap percentage we've seen for Hunt all season. I think we could see that again this week. It was the highest snap percentage, highest rush share we've seen, actually second highest rush share we've seen. He only had 14 carries, but he had 7 catches for 65 yards. And guys, the Bills they're getting killed in the receiving game against the running backs. They're on the most catches, the most receiving yards per game in the NFL. 2 running backs. Kareem Hunt's coming off his best receiving game of the season. Kareem Hunt's a top 10 running back option. You have to start Kareem Hunt this week. And then Kelsey is in a tier of his own. Let me go to the tight end tiers here quick. Let me hop over to the tight end rankings. I have Kelsey in tier 1, and then I have Bowers and Njoku in tier 3. I just skipped a tier because it's really not close. Like Kelsey's projecting like a top 12 wide receiver, and then every other tight end's projecting under 12 points. So Kelsey's a massive, massive advantage in fantasy this week. I still think selling Travis Kelce makes sense in the longer term view for fantasy because, again, if the Chiefs win this week, which I kind of think they will, I kind of think the Chiefs will win and stay undefeated in this game. They're 2.5-point underdogs. I don't think the Bills defense is going to be able to stop the Chiefs offense, and the Chiefs defense is much, much better than the Bills defense. The Chiefs might still have the best defense in the league. I still think it makes sense to sell Travis Kelce in fantasy with the potential for him to not be at full throttle in the fantasy football playoffs like we saw last season. He went under 10 points all 3 playoff games last season in weeks 15, 16, 17. If you had Kelce, you did not win your league. He was the tight end 1 last season in points per game, but he fell off in the fantasy playoffs as the Chiefs geared up for the actual NFL playoffs, which they are going to do again, especially if they win this week, especially if they already have the 1 seed locked up. But yeah, Kelsey's by far tight end 1 this week, specifically. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is a good start this week. Bit of a down game for him last week, but it was versus the Broncos. Tough matchup versus the Broncos. 9.6 points in that one. 4 catches, 56 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be back this week, which is definitely worth watching. It's possible Juju eats a little bit into that Hopkins role. I'm not too concerned about it. I still think Hopkins is a good start. Hop over to the wide receiver ranks here. Xavier Worthy is really tough to trust at this point. I still think there's a ceiling for Worthy because the snap percentage is still there. 75% of the snaps last week was actually a season high for Xavier Worthy. He had 4 targets. He caught 1 of those for 11 yards. This would be, this is like a pseudo revenge game here for Worthy. The Bills were the ones that traded the Chiefs the pick to get Xavier Worthy, which was not looking great after week 1. It was looking kind of fine from what we've seen from Keon Coleman this season, who they ended up getting in the second round after that trade. I still think there's a true ceiling, though, for Worthy if they can connect on a couple deep passes any given week. Tough to trust, though, with the volume he's seeing. So you're starting Hunt, you're starting Kelce, you're starting Hopkins. Mahomes is startable, but again, I prefer Bo Nix. I prefer Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, and Brock Purdy. So if any of those guys are available, I would start those guys over Mahomes. On the Bills side of the game, Josh Allen's a must start. Josh Allen's ceiling is incredible in this game. Really, we already saw Jalen Hurts play. I think there's a pretty good argument that Josh Allen should be QB1 over Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen's been over 20 points in 5 straight games. And we're heading into the stretch of the season now and probably starting in this game because this is really a playoff game. And in these types of games, we see Josh Allen's rushing production and rushing volume increase. Last week, he had 8 carries, 25% rush share, 50 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. I mean, we could easily see something like that again in this game versus the Chiefs as he goes all out in really a playoff environment. So Josh Allen's going to have an insane ceiling in this game. James Cook, you got to be pretty scared for James Cook. You got to be scared for every single running back playing the Chiefs because we've not seen a big game from a running back versus the Chiefs still this season. The best game we've seen this entire season was Bijan Robinson with 13 points. Kamara went under that. Dobbins went under that. Derrick Henry went under that. Jordan Mason went under that. Rashad White went under that. I mean, we have not seen a big game. Honestly, this is a pretty optimistic projection we have in the app right now, 12.2 points. That would be one of the best games we've seen from a running back versus the Chiefs. And James Cook, one of the more efficient receiving backs in the NFL. He's actually got the 4th most touchdowns in the league. He's been efficient this season, 4.5 yards per carry, 8.8 yards per reception. He's not game script dependent because he's a capable receiving back, and he'll get carries if they get leads. But there's other running backs mixing in, and the matchup's just so tough for James Cook. So he's startable, but definitely not a must start this week. Amari Cooper is supposedly going to play in this game. This is one of the last pieces of injury news we're waiting on, but there's no Dalton Kincaid in this game, and there's no Keon Coleman in this game. Keon Coleman remains out. Dalton Kincaid is out. Kincaid got hurt last week. So Dawson Knox enters the view. The Chiefs have not been good versus tight ends. It's been the only position they've been crushed by this season. Dawson Knox, an interesting option. I'm not rushing personally, though, to start Dawson Knox. He played 70% of the snaps last week, only had 3 targets. I think he's got a decent chance of a touchdown. Only has 1 touchdown this season. I would be careful rushing to start Dawson Knox. Let me go to the tight end ranks here. We have Dawson Knox down at tight end 19. That maybe is a little bit too pessimistic. I probably would start him over Conklin, over Gesicki, over Barner. I don't know if I'd start him over Jonnu Smith. I maybe over Jake Ferguson. I don't think I'd start him over Schultz or any of the other guys above. Will Dissly, I'm not starting Dawson Knox over Will Dissly, who's in a good spot versus the Bengals. I'm not starting him over Mark Andrews, who I think I'm also nervous about. TJ Hawkinson, definitely not starting Dawson Knox over him or over Hunter Henry or over Tucker Kraft or over Taysom Hill. So yeah, I think Dawson Knox is probably a must bench because of all of those names I just listed. Curtis Samuel is definitely a name to watch out for too. He played by far his biggest role last week. I mean, it really wasn't close. This was kind of like the first game, like the first real game from Curtis Samuel of the season. 89% snap share. Last week saw 23% of the targets, 7.5 fantasy points. Something to watch here. Curtis Samuel, we thought the role was going to be somewhat large. He was reuniting with his OC that he had his best season under. Last week was the first week we really saw him get any real playing time. So Shakir's a good start. Amari Cooper's a boom-bust start, in my opinion. Hard to know exactly what his role is going to be. He was up to a 50% snap share in week 8. Then he got hurt. He's supposedly going to be playing with a cast on his wrist. Him and Tyreek playing through wrist injuries. Kind of tough at wide receiver. But the ceiling is definitely there for Amari in a game that could be a shootout. This game has a pretty high projected total of points. So we're definitely starting Josh Allen. I think James Cook is an okay start. Khalil Shakir is a good start. Amari Cooper is a ceiling boom-bust option at flex. That's how I would look at it. And then Curtis Samuel is just a sleeper to watch. Dawson Knox is a sleeper. He's not a must-start. Dawson Knox is a sleeper who should see his biggest role of the season. But he has also not been over 10 points once this entire season. Obviously, this is the first game Kincaid is out. I'm going Taysom Hill over Ferg, yeah. So I think the Chiefs win this one. 2.5-point underdogs. I think they show up. This is not a trap game for the Chiefs like last week was. I'm willing to kind of throw last week out the window for the Chiefs. All right, on to the Bengals Chargers. Jamar Chase projects his wide receiver 1. T. Higgins is going to be back this week. He kind of needs to be started with how good we've seen T. Higgins be this season. Guys, in the stretch before T. Higgins got hurt, he was getting more targets than Jamar Chase. So you kind of have to start him in his first game back. A little bit of risk in his first game back. Chargers defense has been good, but the Bengals offense, I don't think it really matters what defense they're playing. They're going to throw out one of the highest rates in the league. They have 2 of the best receivers in the league. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And Chase Brown has to be started. Chase Brown, 9 catches. We were talking about on Thursday Live. Think about it quickly. What running backs in the NFL realistically can have a 9-reception game? There's only 3 running backs that come to mind for me. It is Kamara, Achane, and Chase Brown. And then, of course, Thursday night, Eckler comes super close. He had 8. Didn't quite get there to 9, but he had 8 catches. Pretty close, but not 9. And Eckler will not have 9 probably in a single game this season. Probably no other running back this season will have 9. 9 catches is insane. And that's what we saw from Chase Brown last week. And he's in just an incredible role all of a sudden with Zach Moss out for the season. Khalil Herbert, they signed, but he fumbled his first carry. They ended up getting credited to Joe Burrow. Technically, Khalil Herbert still does not have a carry. His role will probably slowly increase, but he's not a threat to the receiving role. We've seen Chase Brown now go over 22 points in back-to-back weeks. One of those was against the Ravens, which was a tough matchup. So he has to be started in this receiving role, especially in PPR leagues. Let me go to the running back ranks again. Mike Gesicki is back to the bench, guys, in fantasy. Can't be started. I was in on Gesicki, but Higgins is back. And that's really who Gesicki was filling the role of to some extent. Tanner Hudson also got pretty involved last week. Jermaine Burton is going to be back to the bench as well. At the actual NFL, he probably wasn't even on anyone's benches in fantasy. So Joe Burrow is still a guy you really have to start. Chase and T. Higgins are must starts. Chase Brown's a must start. A lot of must starts in this game. This is the game tonight, the night game. The Chargers offense is also one to be very excited about this week because the Bengals, similar to the Ravens, and we saw this play out when they played each other last week, They just are built for shootouts because the offense is so good and the defense is so bad. We have not really seen Herbert have to push it too much this season. This is a team, the Chargers team, that wants to be run first, but their pass rate has sort of ticked up over the last month, really since the bye. We've seen Justin Herbert now go over 19 points in 3 straight games. This is probably going to be the biggest Justin Herbert game of the season. He's got back-to-back massive chances here for fantasy. You get the Bengals and the Ravens. There's really not many QBs I want more on my fantasy teams right now than Justin Herbert, because he gets the Bengals and the Ravens, 30-plus point upside here for Herbert in both these games. Then he gets the Bucs in the first week of the fantasy playoffs. Herbert should be rostered in all leagues. And again, I personally like him more than Russell Wilson this week. I think it's really close. And Russ projects a bit better than him because he's got a great spot versus the Ravens, who Justin Herbert gets next week. Ladd McConkey's a must start this week versus the Bengals. And J.K. Dobbins is a bit risky with Gus Edwards back. The role did decline for Dobbins last week, only 8.5 points. He saw his lowest snap percentage in a decent bit, really since Gus Edwards has been back. He only saw 38% of the carries in this one, 15 carries still. He did still see 3 targets, which was 70% target share. The Bengals have been pretty good versus running backs, though. I prefer to bench Dobbins if I can. Quentin Johnston is an interesting sleeper. Josh Palmer, interesting sleeper. Will Dissly, a very interesting sleeper. We talked about it on the Thursday Night Live. But guys, if Charlie Kolar can do it, so can Will Dissly. Kolar had 15.6 points versus the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals have been crushed by tight ends. Second worst defense versus tight ends. They're allowing the second most receptions, the third most yards, the third most touchdowns. They've allowed some massive tight end performances, including last week and the week before that and the week before that. 3 straight weeks, they've allowed a top 5 tight end performance. And Dissly's heated up a little bit himself. Dissly, 8 points last week. He's had at least 8 points in 3 of his last 4 games. Only 54% snap percentage, but he saw 33% target share. Pretty low volume passing game last week, but Dissly's definitely an interesting sleeper this week for sure. All right, that's the Chargers. I think the Chargers win, by the way, over the Bengals. They're 1.5 point favorites at home. I think the Chargers defense is legit, and the Chargers offense can keep pace with this Bengals offense. All right, last game of the week before we get to the start sit segment, the free player props, the DraftKings lineup through the rest of the live. Last game is this Texans-Cowboys game. Nico Collins is back. This is massive for fantasy. He already projects as wide receiver 2. Guys, no wide receiver is averaging more yards per game in the NFL than Nico Collins. He leads the NFL in receiving yards per game at 113. I think a lot of people have, because time has passed, forgotten a little bit about how good Nico Collins truly was in the first 6 weeks of the season, 5 weeks of the season. He's number 2 in fantasy points per game. He's number 1 in receiving yards per game. He was averaging over half a touchdown per game. Now he gets the Cowboys. Top 2 wide receiver option. Has to be started. Tank Dell, he falls down the rankings a little bit, but still an okay start. Not a must start, but a good start, I would say, for Tank Dell this week. Decent flex option. CJ Stroud's a better option with Nico Collins back as well. We have not seen CJ Stroud go over 15 points since week 6. Cowboys are allowing the most points per game to quarterbacks, though. And then Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is really one of the only running backs, one of the only players that has not had a bad game this season. He has not had a bad game. Dell or Downs this week? Yeah, that one's pretty close. I think it's Dell. I think I would go Tank Dell over Downs. Yeah, it's Tank Dell. It's close though. On the Cowboys side of the ball, so the Texans are 7-point favorites in this one. Dak Prescott's obviously out. We're going to see another game with Cooper Rush. Maybe even we see Trey Lance briefly again. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is a must start. I think this is the last, most notable thing before we get to the start sit segment, because I know we're going to get CeeDee Lamb questions today. I've already seen them in the Discord, saw them before the live started. Guys, you got to start CeeDee Lamb. You have to. There's really no route around it. I know that he popped up with a back injury yesterday. Not of high concern, McCarthy said. McCarthy better hope that, because McCarthy's on the chopping block. And if CeeDee Lamb sits, it's only going to expedite that. But CeeDee Lamb's a top 10 option, really a top 8 option. The Texans, guys, they have been absolutely destroyed by slot wide receivers this season. CeeDee Lamb still saw over a 30% target share last week. It was a bad game, 8.4 points, but he had a 35% target share, 10 targets. He's had at least 10 targets in 4 straight games. He's third in the NFL in targets. has to be started against the Texans. Just has to be. Rico Dowdle, there were some reports this week that Rico Dowdle was going to be in a workhorse role. McCarthy said Rico Dowdle needs to touch the ball. I mean, what does that mean? Was he not already touching the ball? I really feel like this report got overblown a little bit, at least from what I saw. Like, Rico Dowdle was already leading the backfield. He was already leading the backfield in snaps, in carries, in targets. How much bigger of a role does this quote really mean for Dowdle? I'm not really super convinced. He's startable for sure, running back 21 in the projections this week. I mean, he's clearly ahead of Zeke. He's clearly ahead of Hunter Lupke and whatever other running backs the Cowboys are considering, Dalvin Cook. But I'm not super excited to start Rico Dowdle. And then Jake Ferguson, like, this whole offense really outside of season can't be started. And the Texans are almost definitely going to win this game in Dallas. All right. That's every single game. That's every single relevant player in every single game. That was about an hour. We are going to talk through the free player props. We're going to talk through the DraftKings lineup. Then we are going to grind through start-sits basically the rest of the live stream. Let me refresh the Twitter feed here, make sure we didn't miss any news. Don't think so. Optimistic that Tyler Boyd's going to play. That's what we expected. All right. Let's get to the free player props. Then we'll have to talk to the DraftKings lineup. So there's 2 free player props today. We are almost at 65% on these this season. 28 wins, 16 losses. We've been crushing these. Number 1 is Tucker Kraft, over 33.5 receiving yards. There's no Luke Musgrave again this week. We've seen at least 33 yards from Tucker Kraft in 3 straight games. We've seen at least 33 yards from Tucker Kraft in 5 of his last 6 games. I absolutely love when these props are priced at a player's floor, because this is Tucker Kraft's floor, guys, 33 yards. That's what his floor has been over the last 6 weeks. Many of those games without Luke Musgrave. He's seen at least a 10% target share every single week since week 1. And it's really about the matchup here, too, versus the Bears. The Bears are allowing the 3rd most receiving yards per game to tight ends. They're averaging 75 yards allowed per game to tight ends. And Kraft is the only tight end, really, for the Packers today. Would not be crazy to see Tucker Kraft get 75 yards and close to the stat line of 6 catches, 75 yards. That's why Tucker Kraft is a good start this week and why this prop line is just simply too low. So we like the Tucker Kraft over 33.5 receiving yards line with Musgrave still out. And then Juwan Jennings is the other one. Did I even get to the 49ers? Why do I feel like I didn't talk about that game? Oh, we talked about it. Maybe I skipped over the 49ers side of the game. But Juwan Jennings is a great start this week too. Juwan Jennings is like the primary X receiver now for the 49ers. He just stepped into the Ayuk role, essentially. And Ayuk's obviously out for the season. Kittle is also out this week. That is massive for Jennings, for Debo, and for Christian McCaffrey. This is the consolidation of the 49ers offense. And when we have consolidation in this offense, it leads to a lot of fantasy points. We've seen 2 games this season, 2, where Juwan Jennings was playing either without Brandon Ayuk or without Deebo Samuel. One of those was back in week 3 without Deebo Samuel. He had 11 catches, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns in that game, 46 fantasy points. And then one of them was last week without Brandon Ayuk, 7 catches, 93 yards. He's not coming off the field in either of those games, over 80% snap share in both those games. He's got at least 11 targets, over 30% target share in both of those games. Guys, Jennings is a legit good wide receiver, and he's a very good fantasy option, and he's going over 58.5 receiving yards this week. I like this prop line a lot. I think this really should be close to what we saw for Ayuk's lines when he was getting significant target share. He's got a pretty good chance to go over 100 yards in a spot versus the Seahawks, who are not doing well versus receivers this season. The Seahawks are allowing the 4th most yards per game to wide receivers this season. Debo and Jennings have a massive, massive ceiling this week. So yeah, I'm going with Juwan Jennings over 58.5 receiving yards. They actually took this one earlier in the week before Kittle was ruled out. It was at 44.5, I think then, but I like it at 58.5 as well with Kittle out. So yeah, we're going with Juwan Jennings over 58.5, Tucker Kraft over 33.5. Those are the 2 free player props of the week. All right, DraftKings lineup, and then we will go to the start sit segment. So I'm going a little bit crazy here with DraftKings lineup this week. You got to be different with your DraftKings lineups if you're playing in tournaments against hundreds of thousands of people. And this is a tournament lineup. Make no mistake about it. But I'm going with the Jameis Winston revenge game stack here. I'm stacking Jameis Winston with Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. So I'm going cheap here at wide receiver. I'm sneaking in Gabe Davis here too. Gabe Davis versus the Lions. The Lions have allowed some big wide receiver performances this season. The Jags are 14-point underdogs. Mac and Cheese Mac Jones is not a guy I really want to make bets on, but Gabe Davis is close to min priced and I think has a 20-plus point ceiling potential. And I don't think anyone's going to play Gabe Davis. He's going to be very, very low owned. And because I'm sneaking in a low price QB, Gabe Davis, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore into this lineup, I can pay up for McCaffrey, for Achane, and for Kelsey. And Kelsey is really 2 tiers above every other tight end this week. Kelsey is projected over 16 points. The next highest tight end projection is 12. And these guys are not comparable at tight end this week. I like the Achane Dolphins stack. Achane and McCaffrey, they have slate breaking upside. McCaffrey really in a tier of his own this week too. He's projected over 25 points this week. That's the DraftKings lineup for me this week. We've been on a decent streak with these over the course of the season. All right, let's get to the start-sit questions. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. If you're just tuning in, guys, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching live on YouTube, if you're watching live on TikTok, hit the follow button and then come to the YouTube live. If you stay on the TikTok live, you got to hit the follow button. I will not see your comment if you're not following. That is how TikTok works. But also, there's a better viewing experience over on YouTube, and the link is right in the TikTok live. All right, we're going to get to the start-sit comments now. We are not starting Scantling. Guys, don't start Scantling. Scantling has one game this entire season with more than one catch. That was last week. Drake May or Matt Stafford. I think that's May. Let's get to that one in a second. Are we starting Jennings over Tillman? Yes, 100%. I definitely think it's Jennings over Tillman. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's get to this one quick. Pat, how we doing? Drake May versus Matt Stafford. Obviously playing against each other. I think they're really close in the ranks. Yeah, it's May. It's May because one of these guys has rushing upside and one of them just doesn't. Wouldn't be shocking, to see Stafford outscore May. Comparable matchups too. I mean, May's averaging more points per game this season. I mentioned it when we talked about this game earlier in the live. Drake May, if you look at just his full games, the games where he started and finished the game completely, which I think is what? 4 games. We've seen 400% snap percentages. He would rank number 2 or number 3. I think number 3 in rushing yards per game among quarterbacks. If you include some of his partial games, he's at number 6. Like, he has a real rushing potential. And they're going to be trailing in this game too. Yeah, I really think the Rams, there's a good chance this is just a massive Kyren Williams game. He scores multiple touchdowns, gets 25 carries. Definitely possible. Longtime user of Walter Picks, big fan. Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, guys, the best way you could possibly support me and the entire Walter Picks brand is downloading the Walter Picks app. It is a free app. I've spent the last 4 years of my life alongside the Walter Picks team building the Walter Picks app. It is a free app. There's some premium subscriptions in the app. They're well worth it. Use code SAM when you sign up. You'll get a 7-day free trial, but appreciate you, Tyler. Cook, London, Shakir. Pick 2. Yeah, this is not an easy one. Definitely not an easy one. I feel like all these guys are in a similar tier here. We got Shakir versus Cook. That I think is really, really close. And then you throw in Drake London. I think London has to be started in this one. Yeah, it's London. And then James, man, look at this. Look at this decision between James Cook and Khalil Shakir. I kind of think it's Shakir. I think I would go Shakir. I mean, man, this really makes me want to say James Cook. This is saying James Cook's got a better bust percentage and boom percentage than Shakir. So maybe it is James Cook. We have not seen good running back games versus the Chiefs. We just haven't seen it. We have seen good receiver games. That's why my gut said Khalil Shakir over James Cook. But looking at this, man, it maybe is James Cook. I think it is James Cook over Khalil Shakir. Chase Brown or K9 or Tyreek. I think it's Chase Brown. I think I'd go Chase Brown. If this is PPR, I assume it is. If you don't tell me, I assume it's PPR. If you don't say, I'm going to assume it's PPR. Let me go to the running back ranks here. Chase Brown, Kenneth, and Tyreek. Yeah, you got to search it. Guys, Chase Brown had 9 catches. Hey, Walter, BTJ or Pearsall or Judy pick 2. Yeah, so classic mistake. My name is not Walter. My name is Sam. Walter is the AI model that powers the Walter Picks app. I helped build Walter. I helped build the Walter Picks app. My name is Sam. Classic mistake. Do not worry about it. This is a good question, though. Brian Thomas Jr. versus Judy. I think there was one more. Yeah, Pearsall. Pearsall's, I didn't get to the 49ers. We got to pull up the 49ers here. But Pearsall is definitely a good start this week, too. But Judy actually projects the best here. Judy is a good sleeper this week. He is. I think he's closer to Tillman than people realize. Judy's had at least 12 points in back-to-back games. Pearsall is definitely in play as well as a sleeper. Same thing with Brian Thomas Jr. But yeah, I actually think Judy makes the most sense here. I would go Judy over Pearsall over Brian Thomas Jr. Jacoby, Amari, Tillman, 1 for the flex. Yeah, so I'm playing Jacoby and Tillman, I think, over Amari. Amari's got a decent bit of risk this week. Definitely a ceiling. But I think it's Tillman versus Jacoby is close. Man, this one's close. I think I'd probably lean Tillman over Jacoby, but it's very, very close. Jacoby's got a slightly better floor, but Tillman's got the better ceiling. Tillman's got the better matchup. Yeah, I think I'd lean Tillman. Yeah, I have Higgins over Metcalf. Higgins has been better than Metcalf, I think, this season. Let's pull this up. I do think there's risk with both these guys coming back. Yeah, T. Higgins is averaging more points per game than DK Metcalf this season, mostly because of the touchdowns. He's got a higher target share than DK Metcalf, more targets per game, more catches per game, much better touchdown rate, similar yards per out run, less air yards. Metcalf is in the better matchup, though. It's close, man. I wouldn't knock you for going Metcalf over Higgins. I personally think Higgins projects better than Metcalf. Let's go. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you as well, Eric. You just paid for WP yesterday. Let's go, Alex. Booty or Knox for second flex. Braylon or Pirine PPR with running back buys. Yeah, Alex, I see why you downloaded and tried out the Walter Picks app, because these are some deep league questions, and the app is very good for helping with these ones. I wake up in the morning, I get excited about these types of questions. Keyshawn Booty and Dawson Knox. I think it's got to be Booty, right? Yeah, it's Booty. And Booty projects almost for 10 points. He is not really coming off the field right now for the Pats. He's clearly the most consistent and best receiver the Pats have right now. And they're big underdogs versus the Rams. Not really a terrifying matchup either versus the Rams defensively. So yeah, I'm going Booty over Knox. I think Knox is a bit of a trap this week with Kincaid out. I know the Chiefs haven't been great versus tight ends. And then Braylon Allen versus Pirine. Oh gosh. I mean, can you really be playing Pirine? I guess versus the Bills, there's some reception potential there. Yeah, you got to go Braylon Allen here. Ingram or Hawkinson. Let me go to the tight end ranks, guys. Let me go to the tight end ranks. If you guys are watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. I cannot see your comments if you aren't following. That is how TikTok works. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. I do appreciate it. Lad, D-Hop, Myers, PPR. I think it's Lad, man. Lad is in a good spot here versus the Bengals. I think the ceiling's really high. The floor is pretty solid. Let's do this comparison quick, and then we'll talk through some tight ends. All right, let's actually – I forgot. I lost structure here a little bit. I think what we were doing in the past weeks was effective for getting to the most possible start-sit question. So we're going to do this again. We're going to start with tight ends. If you have a tight end start-sit, send it in the comments. If you don't have a tight end start-sit, try to refrain. I'm going to be prioritizing the tight end start-sits specifically over the next 5-10 minutes. We're going to really focus on the tight ends, and then we're going to move on to the quarterbacks, and then we're going to move on to the running backs and receivers. And that way I can really focus in on one category at a time, try to get to as many as I can after you do this start-sit comparison quick. Yeah, wow, they both project for 14. Man, I did not even realize it was this close. But yeah, it's Lad, man. Better matchup for Lad. I think you got to go Lad in the game tonight over D-Hop. Juju's back too. I think there's just a little bit of risk and uncertainty there. We haven't really seen D-Hop and Juju play together yet. All right, tight end questions. We got some flying in here on the YouTube Live. We got some flying in here on the TikTok Live as well. Taysom over Farman. It's got to be Taysom. It's Bowers over Hawkinson. If you have Kelsey, you're starting. Kelsey's literally 2 tiers above every other tight end. So you're starting him. And then Bowers is the next best. There's no George Kittle this week. There's no Sam Laporta this week. Trey McBride is on bye. It's Bowers after Kelsey. And then it's Njoku. Kelsey, Bowers, Njoku. And then it's Pitts. If you have Bowers and Pitts, I'm playing Bowers. If you have Pitts and Ingram, I'm playing Pitts. If you have Jake Ferguson and Taysom Hill, I'm playing Taysom Hill. What is the ceiling for Jake Ferguson? Like play through the scenarios. What is the real ceiling for Jake Ferguson? 10 points? I mean, 12? Like one touchdown, he falls in the end zone. A Zach Ertz type of ceiling from Thursday night. He falls in the end zone, gets it 4 catches, gets like 12 to 14 points. The ceiling for Taysom Hill is like 20 plus. He scores 2 rushing touchdowns. He like can actually make big plays after the catch. We saw 16 points a couple weeks ago. Like in what world is Jake Ferguson getting his 16 points with Cooper Rush starting? Not to bash on Ferguson too much. It's less about Ferguson, more about the offensive situation for both these guys. And the Saints, guys, Taysom Hill is the second best weapon on the Saints offense. It goes Kamara and then Taysom. Get Marcus Valdes-Scantling out of here, man. Do not start Scantling. He fits the Shaheed role. I just know I'm going to be hands in my face as I watch Scantling score 2 long touchdowns again. Kittle's out. Yep, Kittle's out. Kittle is out. So he's not officially out. So let me walk that back a tiny bit. He's expected not to play, but he is going to test it out pregame. So I want to be careful with my words here because Kittle's one of these guys that maybe he will tough it out. But the report this morning was that we shouldn't expect Kittle to play. So for fantasy decisions on this live stream, I think Kittle's out. Like plan for Kittle being out. I think that's the right way to approach it based on the reporting. But it is not 100% that he's out. I'd say it's like 90% that he's out. Enough that they changed the prop lines and that we moved Kittle to be projected out. And Njoku probably going to pop off. Yeah, I mean, none of these tight ends, I don't want to go too far with these tight ends other than Kelsey. They all project barely for more than 10 points. So, like, there's a real floor, I think, across the tight end landscape this week. That's part of the reason I think you can make a good argument for Taysom in the ceiling. And same thing with Kraft, who I think has a real floor. We're taking Kraft over 33.5 receiving yards today. That's one of the free player props. The Bears are allowing 75 receiving yards per game to tight ends. No Luke Musgrave again. I would play Njoku over Evan Ingram. Kraft or Hawk. Man, yeah, that one's close. I personally have Kraft over Hawk. I think that Vikings game might not be close. I like the matchup for Kraft more. Pitts or Hawkinson. Yeah, I'm going Pitts over Hawkinson. Oh, sorry, I didn't pull the tight end ranks on the YouTube live. My bad. I got them up now. Yeah, I'm going Pitts over Hawk. Fellow Ithaca alum, let's go. Pitts or Hawkinson? Yeah, it's Pitts. It's Pitts over Hawkinson. Kraft or Ingram? Yeah, I think it's Ingram over Kraft. So again, the rankings, I have tier 1 is Kelsey. Tier 2, absolutely nobody. Tier 3, Brock Bowers and Njoku. Tier 4, Pitts, Ingram, Taysom, and Kraft. I think all those guys have a reasonable ceiling story to tell. I mean, Evan Ingram's a little bit different. He's more of just a floor play than a ceiling play. Because like again, over half the targets went to tight ends last week from Mac and Cheese Mac Jones. Download the app. Thanks, man. Yeah, guys, download the Walter Picks app. If you have not downloaded the app, I do not know what you're waiting for. It's in the TikTok bio, in the YouTube description. I appreciate it. It's going to help you with fantasy and props. Kraft or Jonnu Smith? Yeah, it's Kraft. I've seen a lot of Jonnu Smith love out there. I get it. He's having a pretty underrated season. You got to give him that. Jonnu Smith is having a very underrated season. He's had at least 6 points now in 5 straight games. He's had at least 45 receiving yards. In 4 of his last 5 games, at least 3 catches in 6 straight games. 5 straight games. We've seen 1 big game, too, back in week 7. But, I mean, what's the real ceiling for Jonnu? I guess it's what he did in week 7. It's a good matchup for him versus the Raiders. I'm kind of nervous about the passing attack, though, for the Dolphins. Similar to a lesser extent than the Lions. The Lions, they're 14-point favorites. The Dolphins, they're 8-point favorites in this game. They might not need to throw very much. It could be a very run-heavy game that goes through the running backs this week. So, yeah, I think it does make sense to go with Kraft over Jonnu Smith. Thanks for downloading the app. I appreciate it. All right, we're switching over to the QBs now. QB start sits. Send your QB start sits in the comments. We're going to go rapid fire to the QB start sits. Brock Wright with Laporta out. Yeah, it's so hard to get excited about Brock Wright. Really tough to get excited about. Brock Wright. Kittle's out this week. Kittle's going to be out this week. Or he's likely to be out. He's expected to be out. Mark Andrews or Hunter Henry. Yeah, I got Henry over Andrews. And I think that's a really tough call. Andrews has obviously been balling, but likely he's going to be back. He's going to be back. All right, let's get to this one. This is a QB start sit here. Guys, if you're watching live on YouTube, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. I will not see your comment if you're not following. That is how TikTok works. And we're going rapid fire in the comments right now. Love or Knicks? Yeah, it's Knicks over Love. It's Wilson over Stroud. Yeah, so let's go through the tiers real quick at QB. Let me pull the QB ranks on both lives. Lamar and Josh Allen, they're the tier 1 guys. Honestly, I think there's a good argument that it is Allen over Lamar this week, given their matchups, but it's close. We're splitting hairs there. Not a start sit anyone has to make. In tier 2, Brock Purdy, Joe Burrow, who have both been balling recently. Russell Wilson, who's been on a good stretch and has a great matchup versus the Ravens. And then Justin Herbert versus the Bengals. I personally actually have to make this call in one of my leagues, one of my high-stakes leagues. Right now, by the way, I'm in the hunt. All 8 of my high-stakes leagues, I'm well within the hunt of the playoffs. Feels great at this point of the year to be able to say that. But yeah, Herbert over Russ, for me, I think the ceiling's just a little bit higher for Herb than for Russ. By the way, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, and you haven't downloaded the Walter Picks app yet, look what you're missing out on. This is what you get in the app. This comparison here between Purdy, Russ, and Herbert. There's tons more insights, too, if you were to scroll down in the app. Purdy projects the best. Russ projects the second best, but Herbert has a much higher ceiling than Russ. A little bit lower floor because the Chargers can lean run heavy. But yeah, I'm willing to go with risk it a little bit with Justin Herbert. I think the floor is a little bit better than a 22% bust percentage. Obviously, they can skew run heavy, but the Bengals have been pretty good versus the running backs and really bad versus the passing game. All right, let's get to the start sit here that I pulled up, and then we'll get to rapid fire. Do I roll with Wilson to hedge my opponent Pickens or go with my gut and Herbert? Yeah, so personally, again, I'm going Herb. I'm going Herb personally over Russ. It's a really close call. I think it is true that Russ has a better floor, but that Herbert has a better ceiling. And for me, I just, my tendency in life and in fantasy is to just skew a little bit more towards the ceiling, take a little bit more risk for a little bit more reward. And I think that's what you're getting with Herb this week. I think that Herbert is a very good option for fantasy. I mean, and it's not like the floor is bad for Herbert either, right? He's been over 19 points in 3 straight. And the Bengals have been just crushed. And the Bengals offense, I think, will put up points versus a good Chargers defense. Lamar went over 30 points. Jalen Hurts went over 30 points. Lamar Jackson went over 30 points. Jaden Daniels went over 28 points. I mean, the elite quarterbacks that they played against all were top 3 quarterback options. I think Herbert ends this week as a top 5 quarterback option. So yeah, I'm going Herb personally over Russ. And I don't like to play the whole hedge. I'm playing against Pickens, so maybe I play Russ, or I'm starting Pickens, so maybe I play Russ. I think just play the best plays is the right way to go about it and not to overthink it. I honestly think for a lot of fantasy, just ignore who you're playing against and just make the best decisions possible. That's how I do it across my leagues, because I hate, I get asked all the time, how many fantasy leagues is too many leagues? And there is a true answer to that. It is 2. More than 2 fantasy leagues is too many fantasy leagues, because that is the point where you are playing against and starting the same guys. And I'm in way too many leagues. I'm in 8 high-stakes fantasy leagues. I do not look at my matchups. I only look at my team. And then at the end of the week or, before the Sunday night game, I'll start looking at the matchups. That's how I do it. Tight end rankings, please. We just went through the tight ends a second ago. All right, let's get to some more QB questions. Yeah, I'm going Taysom over Knox. Any QB start sits, throw in the chat right now. We're focused on the QBs right now. We're going to get to the other positions very soon. Jaden Daniels not on here because he already played. Allen or Nix? Yeah, we're going Allen. Tua or Rodgers? That one's pretty close. Yeah, I think it's Rodgers. Rodgers does have a ceiling. I mean, Rodgers is maybe honestly ranked a little too low in these rankings. Appreciate this. Yeah, I think I would go Jennings over Sutton personally. I think you got to start Jennings. Bo Nix, Goff, or Russ. Yeah, I think Rodgers might be a little too low because we got Adams and Garrett Wilson as top 10 wide receivers, partially because their target shares can just be so high combined. But Rodgers does have a ceiling, and we've seen Rodgers have a ceiling too before this season. I know he's coming off kind of a bad game. Bo Nix, Goff, or Russ. Yeah, it's Nix. It's got to be Nix. You can't start Goff. It's a good matchup on paper versus Goff. For Goff against the Jags. But this could be like that Titans game. I think it will be like that Titans game where Goff threw 3 touchdowns and he didn't even clear 15.5 points. He had 85 passing yards and 3 TDs because he only threw 15 passing attempts in that game. How much more passing attempts than 15 is Goff really going to have? Oh, and I didn't see Russ was in this one. I would go Russ over Bo Nix. The Ravens are such a good secondary to attack. And the Ravens offense is so good. The Ravens and the Bengals, just really similar situations there. Sam, how are we doing? That CMC trade I made in week 3 is finally starting to pay off. Yards, but how are we doing, man? And this is what it's all about, man. The CMC stuff, everyone fully panicked. I mean, there's been some moments of full panic in fantasy this season, and this was certainly one of them. for a decent stretch. Everyone fully panicked on CMC, selling for whatever they could get. And we were buying, man. We've been buying all year on Christian McCaffrey. And this is exactly why. Because all that matters is the fantasy playoffs. And we understand that on this live stream. We understand that at Walter Picks. We're working on some additional insights and screens in the Walter Picks app to give you some more specific playoff insights as well down the stretch of the season here. But yeah, McCaffrey's like the clear running back one this week. It's not even close. He's not even close to Alvin Kamara's projection, who obviously projects extremely well with everyone injured on the Saints. But yes, McCaffrey versus Kamara, it's like a 4-point difference. They're not even really in the same tier, especially with Kittle out. I think McCaffrey gets in the end zone this week, like almost definitely. Good morning. My favorite weatherman, Sam. AR-15 or Carr? Yeah, this is a gross one. We were just on the quarterbacks here. I think it's probably Anthony Richardson for the rushing. Probably go A-Rich in this one. And Weatherman Sam, it's bye week for Weatherman Sam. We got a well-timed bye week, heading into the cold time of the year. Absolutely no weather to be concerned of today. There might be some slight rain in the Bears and Packers game, in the Seahawks 49ers game, but not enough to even mention or worry about. Just don't be surprised if, the ball's a little wet, potentially at moments in the game. It's not going to be the whole game. That's it. Really good weather week, honestly. A bunch of dome games and stuff as well. Hey, Sam, love the new features in the app recently. Thanks, man. Do I wait for Amari Cooper injury status or start to Mario Douglas? Yeah, this is close. And I think Amari's going to play. He is the last, though, true thing we're waiting on this week. Pretty clean injury report week. Not necessarily clean injury week. Kittle's out. That one was a little bit surprising this morning. We got Laporta out. A few guys that are out, but really kind of rare that we're only waiting on one guy, at this point of the week. And yeah, you do have to wait for this Amari report because Amari is a better option than Douglas. These ceilings, look at the comparable of the ceiling here. Not close. These are different ballparks of ceilings. Amari Cooper has a 30+ point ceiling in him in a game versus the Chiefs. That's definitely possible. And Douglas doesn't have that ceiling. Douglas is more of a floor play. Hopefully you're getting 10 points, PPR out of Douglas. Yeah. So I think that Cooper probably plays. It seems like that's where it's trending. So yeah, I would have Cooper in, and obviously you got to monitor it. And I think that game, it's in the later window today, so we might not even get it on the live. Who's winning the Grey Cup? Sam, it's not the Alouettes, Danny. It's not the Alouettes. That's as much as I know, and I know that's a disappointing result of the season. Happy Sunday, Sam. Start James Cook or Calvin Ridley in PPR. Yeah, so I'm going to pull up the projections here quick. We're on to, by the way, we're switching over to the running back wide receiver start sits. We talked to the QBs, talked to the tight ends. We're on to the more difficult wide receiver running back start sits now. Let me pull up the running back ranks here. And I really think, almost regardless of what these projections are going to show me here in a second in the Walter Picks app. Again, if you don't have the Walter Picks app, download the Walter Picks app. It's in the TikTok bio. It's in the YouTube description. It is going to help you in fantasy and in props. I promise you. It is also the best way you could possibly support me in the entire Walter Picks brand. It's a free app. I've spent the last 4 years of my life helping build this app. My name is not Walter. My name is Sam. Walter is the AI model that powers the app that gives it the best possible protections, which I maybe will disagree with at times. This might be one of those. No, we're on the same page here, me and Walter, for this one. Calvin Ridley versus James Cook. It's got to be Ridley, man. James Cook is a very scary start. Is the role been good for James Cook this season? I think so. I think I've been pretty bullish on James Cook most of the season. He's scored way more touchdowns than anyone would have expected. He's averaging almost a touchdown per game. And he's a very good receiving back, 8.8 yards per reception. No matter what happens in the game script for the Bills, James Cook's going to be involved. He's playing over half the snaps. He's not seeing this massive workhorse role, but his role is big enough, no matter what happens in the game script, that he's a pretty high floor play. But he gets the Chiefs, guys. And again, we were just looking at it, just looking back at the matchups. It's not like the Chiefs haven't played good running backs. Kamara had 12.6. Bijan Robinson had 13.2. Those were the two best games versus the Chiefs as running backs. I mean, this is an incredibly good defense. You hate to say it, but the reality is, guys, the Chiefs probably have the best defense in the NFL. Again, they had the best defense in the NFL last season. They were the youngest defense in the league, and they didn't really lose anybody. And they've been pretty healthy. And they've been crushing running backs. And the Chiefs obviously can get leads and stuff too, which is not great for the running backs. So yeah, Ridley also, again, the air yards have been so great for him. I think that Ridley is one of the most underrated fantasy options right now across the board. Dobbins or Stevenson, full PPR. Yeah, guys, you got running back or wide receiver start sits, let me know. Kyron Williams is almost definitely scoring this week. The two guys that I think are almost definitely scoring this week, Kyron Williams and Christian McCaffrey. Obviously those are obvious, but again, almost definitely is pretty aggressive to say. Dobbins or Stevenson, full PPR. Yeah, this one's not easy. I really don't want to start Dobbins, though. Let me go to the high-level takes here quick on the TikTok live. I think I had Dobbins in here as a bench. Yeah, I did. Versus Stevenson. Yeah, man, Stevenson's one spot ahead. I'd go Stevenson. Yeah. I'm more confident in the role for Stevenson than I am for Dobbins. Because with Gus Edwards back, we saw close to season lows for Dobbins usage-wise last week. Breece Hall or Walker? Yeah, I'd be very careful starting benching Breece Hall this week. I know he's been struggling in his past few games, but yeah, I'm going Breece here in this one. I think the receiving role is a bit better. Kenneth definitely has a ceiling, but yeah, this one's Breece. I'm seeing some George Pickens questions, guys. You have to start George Pickens in all leagues. You're starting George Pickens. I know Binghamton well, played soccer there. Not too far from Ithaca, of course. Half PPR, Dobbins, Hopkins, or Pollard. Yeah, this one's Hopkins. I'd go Hopkins over Pollard. Download the app and use your code. Thanks, man. Yeah, download the Walter Picks app. Use code SAM. Does help me out a ton. I appreciate that. Higgins, DK, Garrett Wilson, Tillman, or Ridley. Pick 3. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I got the wide receiver ranks up right now. Let me pull up the wide receiver ranks in the YouTube live. I'll pull those up too. All right, so we got Higgins, DK. I think Higgins projects the best in the app. Then we got DK Metcalf and Ridley. They project right next to each other. That's a really close call. Garrett Wilson projects better than all these guys. I think it's Higgins, Garrett Wilson, and then it's between Ridley and DK. Let's compare these guys. Always a little bit risky to start a guy in their first game back. I think it's probably DK Metcalf over Ridley. He projects a little bit worse. He's obviously been better this season. He's on the team that leads the league in pass attempts. I mean, again, the role for Ridley's great. I think Ridley's very underrated. It's kind of tough to bench Metcalf for him, though, despite what these projections say. We got them back-to-back here in the ranks, too. The same tier for me, both in tier 5. Garrett Wilson's in tier 3. T. Higgins is in tier 4, and both these guys are tier 5. I think I'd go Metcalf personally over Ridley if I had to make that call. What's up, Sam? Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you as well, Jonah. It is the best day of the week. We got some fantastic games on our TV screens in just a few hours, man. I'm feeling great. Week 11. Can't believe it's already week 11, but feeling good on this Sunday morning. All right, got Monty, Debo, BTJ, D-Hop, or Jacoby Myers. Yeah, Montgomery's a guy, speaking of guys that are very likely to score touchdowns, I don't know how Montgomery doesn't score a touchdown in this game versus the Jags unless it ends up being Jahmyr Gibbs. Debo's a great option with Kittle out, Ayuk out. I think I would go D-Hop over BTJ and over Myers. I think it's these first two, though. I'd go Monty and Debo here. And maybe it's Monty versus D-Hop and PPR is maybe close because Monty doesn't get many catches. Let's do that comparison quick. I definitely would want to start Debo Samuel, though. You can't bench Debo Samuel. Yeah, it's David Montgomery. Scantling or Ricky Pearsall? It's Pearsall. Bench Scantling. Bench Scantling. Of all the guys that I'm going to get start-sit questions about, I think Scantling probably has the best chance at 0 points. We might get some ugly ones. We might get some ugly names. I know we were just looking at who's the running back someone asked about. Yeah, we got a Braylon Allen question and Samaje Perine. Like Samaje Perine versus Scantling. Let's do that one to give a sense of what's the floor here for Scantling. All right, so I'd start Scantling here over Samaje Perine. But the floors are like comparable here. There's a 77% chance, according to our projections and simulations in the Walter Picks app, that Scantling scores less than 10 points. He was the wide receiver 2 last week. 109 yards, 2 TDs. This was his first game with more than 1 catch this season. Yeah, I'm out on Scantling, man. This is just not the type of guy I want to be starting in fantasy. Hey, Sam, let's go. It's week 11. Oh, I'm sorry if I just skipped that question. I might have Make sure you send it again. I'll try to get to it. Sutton, Ladd, Dell, Jennings, Amari. Pick 2. Yeah, so this one's Ladd and Jennings. Ladd and Jennings. Ladd versus Sutton, I think, is probably close. I think Jennings over all these guys. Yeah, it's Ladd. It's Ladd and Jennings. Walter agrees with me on this one too. Yeah, Jennings and Ladd over Sutton is really close. All these guys are really, really close. Don't sit Lamb. Start CeeDee Lamb. Start Lamb over Tillman. I'm starting Lamb over basically everybody, guys. I'm starting Lamb over Drake London, over T. Higgins. I'm starting him over Deebo Samuel, over Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. That one's, arguable. But some of these guys farther down the list, like I'm easily starting Lamb over Jennings, over Ladd, over Hopkins, over Sutton, over Ridley, over Metcalf, over JSN, definitely over Tillman. I get the fear about CeeDee Lamb, but I do not think this is the time to be panicking on CeeDee Lamb for start sit decisions or for trades. Yeah, it's Chase Brown and Jacobs over Mondre easily, for sure. It got to be Chase Brown and Jacobs too. Start 1, Tyreek, Jameson, and Myers. Yes, Tyreek. I would start Tyreek over these guys. Tyreek versus Ridley, it's Tyreek. I'm going Tyreek over Ridley too. And that one's close. I think it's close. Ridley, Tillman, Aaron Jones. Yeah, it's Ridley here. Let's do Ridley. Let's do this one, though. Maybe it's Aaron Jones. I don't think it's Aaron Jones. Let's do Ridley, Aaron Jones. Maybe it is Aaron Jones here. Tillman. It is. The floor is definitely better for Aaron Jones. The ceiling, I would argue, is maybe better for Ridley. But yeah, it's Aaron Jones. Higgins or Adams? Yeah, I'm going Adams over Higgins. Happy Sunday, Sam, Jason, or Lamb. It's Lamb. Yeah, it's Lamb over Jason. Tyreek versus Kenneth Walker. That one's close. I think I'd probably lean Kenneth there. Devontae over Sutton. I'm going Tillman over Mooney. I think Tillman over Mooney. Let's actually do that comparison quick. D-Hop, Ridley, or Dobbins in PPR. All right, we got Tillman and Mooney. They got to be close together. It actually probably is Mooney that projects better. Yeah, it is. So it's Mooney over Tillman. I think that one's really close. I honestly still might lean Tillman there myself. And then Hopkins, Ridley, and Dobbins. Yeah, I'm playing both these receivers over Dobbins and PPR pretty easily. Both Hopkins and Ridley project exactly 14 points in the Walter Picks app projections. It's a floor ceiling decision, I think, here for sure. I do think there's a little bit more risk to Hopkins this week with Juju back. We have not seen that happen. I think I'd go Ridley over Hopkins personally. Happy Sunday, Father Walter Picks. Don't think I've heard that nickname before. Zay Flowers or T. Higgins? Yeah, I'm going T here. Pick 2, DK, Najee, Rico, or ETN. Half PPR. I think this one's DK, and then it's Najee or ETN. Let's compare these running backs. ETN and Rico Dowdle. Wow, Dowdle projects the best. I feel like I'm not all aboard this Rico Dowdle train that started this week. Jalen Warren seems likely to play now, so I'm less interested in Najee than I was when I thought Warren was going to be out. Honestly, I think this is ETN. I think I would go ETN over Dowdle, and I'd go ETN over Najee too. Downloaded the app. Thank you, Derek. Yeah, guys, if you have not downloaded the Walter Picks app yet, I do not know what you're waiting for. You are actively not trying to win your league. Is CD playing? Yeah, I do think CD's playing. Sounds likely he plays. He did flare up with a back injury. He's been dealing with other injuries too. But I do think he plays, and he's playing against the Texans, guys. And the Texans have been absolutely dominated by slot wide receivers this season. They have been one of the worst defenses versus the slot this season. I think we see Lamb crush them on Monday night, assuming he plays, which I think is like 90% chance that he plays. And there's like a 90% chance Kittle's out as well today. That's the other big injury news that came this morning. I need 2 of them to start. Tyreek, Dobbins, Zay Flowers. Yeah, this one's Tyreek and Zay. I think Dobbins is a bench this week. I think he's a bench this week if you have him. Hill or Kupp? Yeah, it's Kupp over Hill. Knox or Disley? I'd go Disley there. BTJ or ETN? I think ETN's safer. Tight end ranks. I'll go to the tight end ranks next. Half PPR. Start 2. Shakir, JSN, Quentin Johnson, Jameson Williams, and Cedric Tillman. Appreciate the content always. Thanks, man. Appreciate the positivity, guys. Positivity is contagious. Negativity and positivity, both highly contagious. So I appreciate it. Shakir, JSN. Yeah, so it's between these first two and the last one here. I'm not starting Quentin Johnson. I'm not starting Jameson Williams here. It's really a 3-player question. I think it's Shakir, JSN, and then Tillman. JSN projects the best. I mean, all 3 of these guys, I think you can make a real argument for. JSN's got the highest ceiling, but the ceiling really came for JSN with Metcalf out. Metcalf is back. I do not think he has the same ceiling now. I don't think he's going to be in the same role, getting as many air yards as he was getting. He had 227 air yards in this week 9 game without Metcalf. Almost every other week, he's under 100. Like, he's getting way, way, way different types of targets with and without Metcalf. I think he's more of a floor play than a ceiling play this week. Tillman, I think, arguably has a higher ceiling. And we've seen it 3 straight games. There's no reason to expect his role to change much. He's in a good matchup this week. He's at least 18 in 3 straight. We're benching Andrews because Likely is back. And the role has not been good for Andrews with Likely back. This is a really tough call. I think it is JSN. I think I would go JSN. It's really between him and Tillman in my mind over Shakir. Amari's playing. I think that does muddy it for Shakir a little bit. Sam, Spears, Downs, or Keenan Allen? Yeah, I mean, the Josh Downs projection is such a weird one with A-Rich back, Pittman back. I do not want to start Keenan Allen at all. He's the Bears receiver I'm most concerned about. Spears had an interesting role, but he's still running back too. And of course, Keenan projects the best. I think I would go Downs here over Keenan personally. And in PPR, I think they both make sense over Spears. Higgins or Kupp? Yeah, it's Kupp over Higgins. There's really not that many guys I'm starting over T. Higgins this week. It's a pretty short list. Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, George Pickens, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson. Pull up the wide receiver list here on the YouTube live as well. Guys, we're live on TikTok and YouTube. If you're watching live on YouTube, smash the like button. Helps me out way more than you realize. We are 2 hours in. We got at least another hour to go. We are in the rapid fire start sit segment. I'm getting to as many start sits as I possibly can. If you're watching live on TikTok, the YouTube live is a better viewing experience. The link to that's right in the TikTok bio. But if you stay on the TikTok live, no problem with that. Shout out to everybody in both lives. You got to hit the follow button for me to see your comments. Like I'm seeing Adams versus Kupp. That one's super close. I think Adams over Kupp. There's some legitimate argument to make there. I think I would go Adams over Kupp. I got a question here. Lamb, Puka, or Brees? Man, I mean, in this one, it's Brees. I think I'd go Brees over Lamb and Puka. Best cheap tight end. There's a lot of good cheap tight ends. And I think probably the best one is Taysom Hill. The guy that's most likely to be available on your waiver wire and it has a real upside, it's Taysom Hill. He's the second best player on the Saints offense. Tucker Kraft, he's an interesting one. Hunter Henry, Will Dissly, he's available in a bunch of leagues too. He's probably next up on that list. JK or DK? Yeah, I'm going DK Metcalf over JK Dobbins. What do you think? Bass or Bates? Yeah, this is not really the stream for kickers. I think I'd probably lean Bates over Bass, but I'm not going to think too much about it. Good morning, Sam. Got another one for you. Pick 2 of 3. Lamb, London, Adams. Yeah, this one's Lamb and Adams, I think, over London. I was going to sit Drake. Yeah, I think versus Denver. I know the injury for Lamb. There's a bunch of different reasons to be a little nervous about Lamb. I'm personally not that scared about CeeDee Lamb right now. Alvin, good morning to you as well. Great to see you back in the live stream. Hope all is well. Tough start sit, McConkey or BTJ. Yeah, so BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., I get the appeal. I do. I think there is a real ceiling for Brian Thomas Jr. I do not want to overlook the ceiling for Brian Thomas Jr. this week. He gets the Lions. They rank second worst versus wide receivers this season in terms of fantasy points allowed. We've seen some massive games versus the Lions defense. Chris Godwin had 25. Cooper Kupp put up 32. Marvin Harrison Jr. went for 17. Metcalf had 15. The Seahawks receivers combined for almost 40 points. CeeDee Lamb had a good game. Justin Jefferson had a good game. Calvin Ridley had a good game. Almost every single week. Jaden Reed, John Mechie, almost every week we're seeing a big wide receiver game versus the Lions. And the Jags are 14-point underdogs in this game. I mean, the Jags are going to have to throw. Brian Thomas Jr. himself, he's not been quite as good as he was in the beginning part of the season, his last couple of weeks. It's harder to get excited about Mac Jones. Mac and cheese Mac Jones is not easy to get excited about. Mac and cheese Mac Jones, we were looking at it earlier in the live. I mean, it was even worse than I realized last week. He had 7 fantasy points and he scored a rushing touchdown. His passing numbers combined for 1 point. He had 111 yards. He had 5 yards per attempt. That is awful. 5 yards per attempt. His quarterback rating was 38. I didn't even realize it could go that low. He had 2 picks, 3 sacks, 111 yards. I mean, if he didn't score that rushing touchdown, he would have had 1 point. So, yeah, I think you got to go with McConkey and Herbert, who's balling. McConkey in a potential shootout versus the Bengals. I think it will be a shootout versus the Bengals. The Chargers are allowing the fewest points per game defensively. I think that won't hold up, though, against the Bengals offense. Chase Brown or Pickens, yeah, these are 2 guys you just have to start. Chase Brown's safer. I'm not benching Pickens this week, though, guys. You can't bench Pickens versus the Ravens. We just saw Jamar Chase drop a 50 bomb on the Ravens. I'm not saying Pickens is Jamar Chase, but Pickens, I think, if we're debating, a top 10 wide receiver list in the NFL, like ignore fantasy for a second, and we're just debating who's the top 10 receivers in the NFL, a fun debate to have, of course. Pickens is in that debate, guys. He's in the debate. He's number 8 in yards per route run. He's been more efficient on a per route basis this season than Deebo Samuel, Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Terry McLaurin, Zay Flowers. I mean, he's right behind Justin Jefferson. The 2 guys that stand out to me looking at this yards per route run list in the Walter Picks app, if you guys haven't checked out this new feature in the app, again, this is free. The app is free. So much of the research tools in the Walter Picks app for all these advanced stats are free. Again, you can download the app in the description and in the TikTok bio if you're watching live on TikTok. But George Pickens at 2.9 yards per route run. That ranks number 8 in the NFL. It's just behind Justin Jefferson. The other guy that stands out on this list, Jawan Jennings. He's one of the free player props today, over 58.5 receiving yards. No Kittle this week, almost definitely. And obviously no Ayuk. Jawan Jennings, in his 2 games that he's played in without Ayuk or without Deebo, he's got at least 10 targets in both. He's been a top 12 wide receiver in both. And he's balling. 3.1 yards per route run. That's just as good as Justin Jefferson, just as good as Devontae Adams. Look at A.J. Brown on this list too, man. 4.3. Absolutely insane. That might be somehow skewed because he played on Thursday night. Andrews or Kraft? Yeah, I'm going Kraft over Andrews. Aaron Jones or DK Metcalf? I think you got to go Aaron Jones here over DK Metcalf. It's a close call. Half PPR start too. I think I got this one. Good morning, Sam. Pick 2, Kupp, Higgins, or London? Definitely going Kupp here. And then Higgins versus London, I think is really close. Yeah, I have them back to back. I would go Higgins over London. London gets Pat Surtain most likely most of this game. Carr, May, or Love. Pick 2 PPR. Yeah, it's the last 2 here. I bench Carr, play May, and play Love. Mooney or JMO? It's Mooney over JMO. T. Hill or Kraft? Yeah, so we'll go back to the tight end ranks quick. Really close call between those 2 guys. I think that the ceiling for Taysom is higher than Kraft, and the Kraft floor is better. Kraft is the other free player prop of the day. We've been crushing these free player props, by the way, where we could take Tucker Kraft over 33.5 receiving yards. He had at least 33 yards in 5 of his last 6 games. I love when these props are priced at the floor of what we've seen over the last month and a half. No Luke Musgrave again this week. The Bears allowing 75 yards per game to tight ends this season. That's 3rd worst in the NFL. And then Jawan Jennings over 58.5 is a great option as well versus the Seahawks. Their defense has not been good this season. I'm going James over Derek Carr, seeing that one in the TikTok live. But yeah, personally, I think I probably would risk it with Taysom. It depends on what my situation is. I think with the matchup, what your risk tolerance is. I think Kraft and Taysom, they're really close. They're in the same tier for me. Ridley or Tyreek? Yeah, so it's Tyreek over Ridley. I want to say Ridley because I think the role for Ridley's just been really underrated, but I still think Tyreek is probably who I would start there. Good morning, Sam. In first place because of your input. Let's go. And like I say on these lives, is Kittle playing? No, he's probably not playing. Like I say on these lives most weeks, ultimately, you guys got to make your own calls. That's the fun part of fantasy. I'm not here to make decisions for you. I am here to try to give you all the information I possibly can give you, all the information I have to help you make your own best decision. That's why in some of these, like in that Taysom Kraft one, I didn't even give a clear answer of I think I would play Taysom. But if you want to have a better floor, then you got to go Kraft. You got to make that call. So Dimitri, you're in first place, man. I'm glad I helped, but ultimately it's you. All right, we got Jennings, DK, Hopkins. Yeah, so I think it is Jennings. Let's go Jennings versus DK versus Hopkins. Again, we've seen Jennings play in 2 games this season without Debo or without Ayuk. Just twice. One of them was last week, and one of them was much earlier in the season. The one earlier in the season was that game that he almost had 50 fantasy points. That was without Debo. Last week he had no Ayuk. And the result, 16 fantasy points, top 20 wide receiver, 7 catches, 93 yards. He played 90% of the snaps. That was a season high. He had a 32% target share. That was the most he had since the last game he played without one of these receivers. I think you got to go Jennings, man. I think Jennings is a very, very good option. High floor and high ceiling. I think Hopkins is more of a floor play and Metcalf's more of a ceiling play. And Jennings is just a great combo of both. Also, need help at running back deep league. Spears, Gus Edwards, Algier, Allen have to pick up one to start. Yeah, it's Spears, man. Definitely Spears here. Spears is going to have the most receptions of this group, especially if this is a PPR league. Spears played 44% of the snaps. London and McConkey. Is London or Mooney seeing Surtain today? Yeah, it's probably London. It's going to be a combo of both, realistically. It will be a combo of both. It's probably mostly London. And London versus McConkey, yeah, definitely a tough call there. I like McConkey a lot this week versus the Bengals. He's not going to project as well as London. You still kind of have to go London. It's close enough that it's not that crazy to go Lad here. I think I would still go London, though. It's a tough matchup, but you don't want to for certain guys, you don't want to overreact to matchup. Hey, Sam, help a brother out. LOL, start 3. Tad, how we doing, man? Full PPR. Hill, Cup, Higgins, and Chubb. You need to start Cooper Kupp. This is a full PPR. I think you got to go with the receivers here. In a full PPR league, you got to go with receivers, I think, Tad. You bench Chubb. I really like Nick Chubb this week, too. But I think you bench him in a PPR league for T. Higgins, Cooper Kupp, and Tyreek Hill. How come CD is so high? They had 45 total passing yards last week in a pass-heavy game script. Yeah, I get that. I do. I understand the concern around CD Lamb. It was ugly last week. They had literally 45 passing yards. I think that was maybe Cooper Rush and maybe Trey Lance came in and had something. 6 catches for Lamb last week, 21 yards. He had half their receiving yards, basically. 8.4 points. But this was against the Eagles, guys. They don't play the Eagles this week. The Eagles are a top 5 defense this season, and we saw it again on Thursday night. The Texans' defense has been bad this season. They especially have been bad versus slot wide receivers. We've seen them crushed by slot receivers. They are one of the worst slot receiver defenses in the league. They have allowed the 3rd most touchdowns to receivers. We had the same insight. We saw Demario Douglas. He was a big one. Josh Downs, big one out of the slot, and then Devontae Adams too, and Garrett Wilson combined over 50 points. 50 points combined. So yeah, I think Lamb still is a must start. He's going to get over a 30% target share. He's playing out of the slot against a team that struggled versus the slot. He had a tough matchup last week, which I think is overweighting people's perception a little bit. The Eagles have been a good defense. This is not an Eagles defense they're playing. Lad or JSN? Yeah, I'm going Lad. I'm going Lad over JSN, I think. Let's do this comparison quick. I know JSN projects well, too, after a really good game last week. Yeah, I'm going Lad. Chubb, Tillman, or Pollard? Yeah, it's Chubb and Tillman there. I'm playing Chubb and Tillman over Pollard easily. And if it's PPR, I think that one's really close. Again, I know, Tad, I just told you to bench Chubb. I think in that spot it made sense. In this one, yeah, I think I would go Chubb over Tillman. Again, I like Nick Chubb this week. I wanted to make him a free player prop of the game, but they moved his prop line up a lot before the live stream. They opened the prop, I think it was at 50 or 55.5, and now it's up to like 65.5 or something. If you had the Walter Picks app, you would have been on that early. But the matchup is great for Chubb. He's going to get at least 15 carries in this game. And I think underrated for Nick Chubb. He's not been good. He's been inefficient. The carry volume has been higher than I expected. But underrated thing for Nick Chubb heading into this week is how hard the schedule's been for Chubb in his 3 games so far. He's played 3 top 4 defenses versus running backs. And now he gets the Saints. By far his best matchup of the season. 15 carries versus Saints so far this season. That's meant like 15 plus points. Chase or Monty? Yeah, it's Chase Brown. You can't bench Chase Brown. In PPR leagues, guys, you can't bench Chase Brown. Like Chase Brown versus Juwan Jennings, I think that one's Chase Brown too. He had 9 catches last week, guys. Like Juwan Jennings isn't even going to get to 9 catches. In the game where Juwan Jennings scored almost 50 fantasy points, he only had 11 catches. He had 2 more catches than what Chase Brown had last week. Crazy. I'm not saying Chase Brown's going to get to 9 catches again, but the receiving role is just undeniably massive for Chase Brown right now. Aaron Jones or T. Higgins, full PPR. Yeah, I think it's Aaron Jones over T. Higgins. Higgins or David Montgomery. This feels like a floor. I think Higgins, a lot of the Higgins decisions are floor ceiling decisions this week. First game back. T. Higgins, guys, is having a great season. He was out targeting Jamar Chase for a decent stretch when they were playing together. Man, the PPR is close. But David Montgomery, I think, has the highest odds of a touchdown this week. They're 14-point favorites. The Lions. I think I would go T. Higgins personally, but if you want to lock in a solid floor, you go Montgomery there. Jennings or Myers? Got to be Jennings. Got to start Jennings. We go to the high level takes here on the TikTok live again. Pearsall is a good sleeper too. I'll go to the running backs next. Good day, Big Sam. How we doing, Zachary? Dowdle or Pollard, full PPR. Walter Picks likes Dowdle. Yeah, we were talking about this live. Like, I don't know if I'm full aboard the Dowdle train. Like, I'm not so convinced that whatever report or quote that came about Dowdle this week like meant anything. Like, what did that even mean? They said McCarthy said he needs to touch the ball. And then there was a bunch of speculation that he's going to be in this workhorse role all of a sudden, or in this. I saw some people saying, "Oh, Dowdle's in the lead role now." He was in the lead role before. He's been in the lead role all season. I don't get what's changing. There's nothing material has changed about Dowdle. Nothing. I mean, he's still competing with bad competition. You know, Zeke and Dalvin Cook are fully washed. Hunter Lupke, the fullback, is stealing targets somehow. The offense, though, is bad. Like, CeeDee Lamb's really the only guy I can get excited about this week. It's not like the Texans have been a good matchup for running backs. I don't know, man. I'm not as excited about Dowdle as I think other people are, and even the Walter Picks app is, but I'm not that excited about Pollard either with Tajay Spears back. So for this start sit specifically, I think it's okay to go Dowdle. But yeah, I want to temper expectations, man, for Dowdle. I'm not full aboard the Dowdle train just quite yet. He is the best running back on the Cowboys, clearly. But that's been the case all season. Again, what's changed? Like, nothing's really changed other than this one-off quote from Mike McCarthy, who might not even be the coach next week. Like, it wouldn't even be that crazy. He probably will be, but it wouldn't be that crazy. I think Mike McCarthy is one of the worst coaches in the NFL right now. Dowdle or Dobbins? Yeah, this one's probably gonna be Dobbins. Man, it's close. I don't want to start Dobbins either. I think this one's Dobbins though. Thoughts on Amari Cooper or Devontae Adams? If Amari's gonna play, could be a target there. Yeah, it's got to be Devontae, Ben. It's got to be Devontae because Devontae is a top target. Amari could be a top target. Devontae just is. Devontae is out-targeted Garrett Wilson now over the last 3 weeks. This was exactly what I was scared of for Garrett Wilson. That hasn't really come to fruition because Garrett Wilson's, it doesn't really matter. If Devontae Adams out-targets Garrett Wilson, but they both go over 30% target share, like that doesn't really matter for Garrett Wilson. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's definitely a good thing for Adams, though. And this is a good matchup for Adams. I think Amari Cooper has a really high ceiling. Like, it's actually pretty crazy to look at this. Like, the ceiling for Amari Cooper is not that much different than the ceiling for Devontae Adams, even though the projections are so wildly different. But the floor is not comparable here. And one of these guys is playing with a cast on their wrist. And Adams, he was questionable this week too. Worth noting. If we're gonna, use that as a knock against Amari, who's dealing with an illness. I think was his injury a wrist injury too? Yeah, it was a wrist issue. All these wrist issues. Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, and Tyreek all dealing with wrist issues. But yeah, it's Adams easily, I think, over Amari at this point in time. There's still some uncertainty there, though. Like, Amari's the only guy we're still waiting for, I think, officially, to hear if he's in or if he's out. Knicks, Mahomes, or Wilson? Yeah, it's got to be Russ this week. Got to be Russ. Jennings or Hopkins? Got to be Jennings. Guys, start CeeDee Lamb. We're starting CeeDee Lamb. I get it. They only had 45 passing yards last week. Lamb popped up with a back injury, but the matchup is undeniably great, and he's going to get over 30% target share. Choose two, happy PR, Adams, Ridley, or T. Yeah, so I just saw someone else. I'm struggling to start Ridley over. Who is it that you were struggling to start Ridley over? Seeing a lot of questions here. Flowers, Ridley, Jennings. Tight end ranks. Yeah, I can pull those up. Let me go to the tight end ranks here. Tight end, I think, kind of straightforward this week. And there's some difficult decisions for tight end, like deeper down the list, I think. I'm pretty down on Mark Andrews this week. I'm pretty down on Dawson Knox this week. I know there are a bunch of people out there liking both those guys. All right, let's go to Adams, Ridley, and T. Yeah, this one's Adams and T. I play Adams and T over Ridley. I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk through the wide receivers here in Calvin Ridley. I think Ridley versus Tyreek. I'd go Tyreek there. I'm playing Jennings over Ridley. I'm playing Ladd over Ridley. Hopkins versus Ridley. I'm going Ridley there. Ridley versus Metcalf. I think you kind of have to go Metcalf over Ridley. Sutton versus Ridley. I think I'd probably personally lean Ridley over Sutton. Ridley versus Shakir. I think it's a floor ceiling choice. Ridley has a really high ceiling, guys. Again, he's in one of the best roles in the NFL. Like, he's going to get at least 8 targets. He's done that in 5 straight games. He's going to go over 100 air yards. These aren't just, targets at the line of scrimmage, which he's getting some of those too, but he's getting consistently deep targets. He's 3rd most air yards in the NFL. Ridley versus JSN, I'm going Ridley there. I think Ridley's ceiling is much higher. Ridley versus Jaden Reed, I'm going Ridley. Ridley versus Mooney, I'm going Ridley. Ridley versus Cedric Tillman, I'm going Ridley there too. Ridley versus Jerry Jeudy, Brian Thomas Jr., I'm going Ridley for sure. As you go further down the list, I think it's easier to start Ridley. But I get this, and he's not the easiest guy to start over certain spots. Like, I'm not starting him over T. Higgins. I'm not starting him over CeeDee Lamb. I'm not starting him over Puka or Kupp or Adams or Debo or T. Higgins. I'm not even starting him over Drake London, which I think there's an argument to do. I'm not starting him over Zay, which I think there's an argument for that too. I'm not starting him over Tyreek or Jennings or McConkey. I would start him over Hopkins, I think, and Sutton, personally. Hopkins, I think, is more of a floor ceiling. Why is Tua a must-sit? Is Kelsey tight end one rest of the season? So Tua is a must-sit because I'm not convinced Tua and Jared Goff are must-sits because I'm not convinced they're going to need to throw the ball at all this week. Like, both those teams could go under 15 pass attempts, and it would not be crazy. Kittle is unlikely playing today. Unlikely to play. That was a report from this morning. Part of the reason we're very in on Jennings and Debo this week. PPR, Pearsall, Dobbins, or Pittman Jr.? Pearsall, Dobbins, or... Yeah, it's got to be Dobbins there. It's Dobbins or Pearsall. It's Dobbins or Pearsall there. Let's do this one. I think Pearsall is a good sleeper this week for sure. Dobbins is going to project better. Yeah, he does. I'm definitely anxious about Dobbins. I have him in my must bench list because I think if you can, you should bench him. Honestly, in PPR, I might go Pearsall. I think the floor for Dobbins is really low. The Bengals have been very good versus running backs. 3rd best defense versus running backs this season. Kind of surprising. Tracy had a good game. Derrick Henry only had 14 points. Saquon only had 12 points. They played good running backs. They played Henry twice. Saquon. And they ranked 3rd best for running backs, 5th best for running backs. Yeah, I think I would go Pearsall over Dobbins. I think that makes sense. I do still think Disley is a good option. I'm playing HN over everybody. I just had HN or Ladd. I like Ladd, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Like sometimes it is easy to get ahead of yourself with sleepers. It is. You got to caution yourself sometimes with that. Like, I like Ladd a lot. You're not benching HN. I like Ladd a lot. You're not benching George Pickens. Hunt or Ridley for flex. Yeah, this is the first Hunt question I've seen. Let's talk about Kareem Hunt for a second. Geno or Tua? Yeah, I'm going Geno. Geno leads the NFL in pass attempts and pass yards. Let's go to... It was Hunt, and was it Ridley that you said? Kareem Hunt is a must start, guys. You have to start Kareem Hunt. Let me go to the running back tiers here. Let me go to the running back ranks here. There's a group of running backs that are elite options. So McCaffrey, I have him in a tier of his own this week, in tier 1. He projects 4 points above Alvin Kamara, especially with Kittle out. If you had the guts to trade for McCaffrey, good job. We talked about it all season, why it made sense. he projects as the running back one rest of the season. The number one player in fantasy rest of the season is McCaffrey. And I think he gets in the end zone for the first time this week. Kamara, Achane, Mixon, Kyron Williams, Bijan. You have to start all these guys. Guys, Kareem Hunt is in the same tier as Bijan this week. There's no Pacheco this week, but there might be Pacheco next week. Like, this is like one of these weird situations where there's almost more incentive for the Chiefs to ride and give Kareem Hunt this workhorse role, as they have Pacheco waiting in the helm and aren't going to likely be starting Kareem Hunt very soon. He's been playing great. He's coming off a season-high 65% snap percentage. And now he gets the Bills, who are allowing the third most fantasy points per game to running backs, that are allowing the most catches, the most receiving yards. After we just saw Kareem Hunt get 7 catches for 65 yards last week. Kareem Hunt was a top 10 running back last week without a touchdown. And he's got a good chance to score this week. He's got a good chance to catch a bunch of passes this week. Elite floor, elite ceiling for Kareem Hunt this week. Basically, all situations you're starting Kareem Hunt. Downs, ETN, Ladd. Yes, Ladd. It's got to be Ladd over Downs and ETN. Tillman or Cook at flex. Yeah, I'm going Tillman over Cook. I don't know if the projections necessarily agree with me on that one, but I'm going Tillman over Cook. I think you can bench James Cook if you can. Nick Chubb or Tank Dell? Yeah, I'm going Chubb there over Tank Dell. I like Chubb a lot this week. I do. Hunt or Dobbins and Lamb or Pickens? Yeah, so it's Matt. It's definitely Hunt. And I think it's definitely Pickens. I'm not benching Pickens versus the Ravens. I mean, just take a peek back, man, at last week and tell me how you're going to bench George Pickens. Not only what George Pickens did, but what Jamar Chase did. Jamar Chase went for 11, 264, and 3. He had 55 points. You know, obviously George Pickens, we're not expecting 55 points. But the ceiling is so massive. The Ravens are going to be able to score in this game. The Steelers defense is good. I actually think the Steelers are a good underdog pick this week. They played well versus Lamar in the past. But Pickens has meshed so well with Russ. He's got 3 straight games with at least 70 yards, 3 straight games with at least 4 catches. He's got a touchdown in 2 of his last 3. This is the best matchup of the season for the Steelers passing attack and George Pickens. This is another one of these spots. We were just talking about this with Nick Chubb. He had 3 matchups for his top 4 run defenses so far. Now he gets his best matchup of the season versus the Saints. The Steelers had one of the hardest, maybe the hardest passing game schedule so far this season. They get one of the easiest rest of season. Arrow's pointing up big time for this passing attack. I think Mike Williams' role probably grows this week, but yeah, I'm starting Pickens, man, in all spots. Morning, Sam. Have a blessed Sunday. You as well, Jared. Thomas Jr. or Pollard in the flex. Yeah, this is a good one. This is close because I think I like the appeal of the ceiling for Brian Thomas Jr. in this spot. He's still playing a lot, and I think Pollard is more of the floor option here. I think I personally would probably go Brian Thomas Jr. and go for the ceiling. The projection's close enough here that I think Brian Thomas Jr. offers just a little bit more week winning upside here. A Dunze or Gabe Davis? Yeah, I'd go with Dunze there. I do have Gabe Davis in the DraftKings lineup this week. I think he's a sneaky sleeper. Ingram or Kraft for tight end? Yes, Evan Ingram over Kraft. Let me go to the tight end ranks here. You guys are watching live on TikTok, guys. We're in the rapid fire comment section of this live stream where I'm trying to get you as many start sits comments as I can. But you have to follow on TikTok for me to see your comments. Hit the follow button. QB rankings, please. Let me hop to the QB ranks. How's it going, brother? Going well. It's going great. It's week 11. It is the best day of the week. We got great games coming up in like an hour and a half now. Choose one. Half PPR. ETN. Chubb. Ridley. Half PPR does make this different. And scoring settings matter, guys, a ton. So thanks for giving me the scoring settings in this question. If you don't tell me the scoring settings, I assume it's PPR because that's just what all my leagues are and how my brain works. But in half PPR, like it really, really does skew much more towards the running backs, and in non-PPR even more so. So let's take a look at this one. Yeah, it's Chubb. In half PPR, it's Chubb. I think in full PPR, it's probably Ridley. In half PPR, it's Chubb. Again, this is part of the reason, guys, you got to download the Walter Picks app. I'm not going to be able to get to all the start sits in this live. I'm going to get to hundreds. We probably already gotten to over 100 on this live stream. But the Walter Picks app can answer all of your start sits custom to your league settings for free. It's in the TikTok bio. It's in the YouTube description. There's some premium subscriptions in the app that are well worth it too. If you use code SAM, you'll get a free 7-day trial of those. Appreciate you guys' support. All right, let's get to some more here. Chubb or Hall, yeah. So I like Chubb, but we're not getting ahead of ourselves here. You're still starting Brees. Good morning, Sam. Russell Wilson or Geno Smith? Definitely Russ. It's got to be Russ. We have Russ projected ahead of Herbert this week. I actually like Herbert more than Russ, personally, for the ceiling. But they're both tier 2 options. Both very good options. The code in the app is Sam. Use code Sam. It's right here. Use code Sam if you're watching live on TikTok. Pull it up on YouTube too. So let me get back to this comment. Hey, Sam, Devontae Adams or T-Hop? Yeah, it's Adams. QB rankings, I got you. Let me know in the TikTok live what rankings you want to see next. Estimate or Spears? Yeah, that one's close. In PPR, that one's really close. In half PPR, it's probably not as close. I think it's Spears over Estimate. Man, it's not. It's Estimate over Spears. Yeah, I think that makes sense. In half PPR especially. Where is Baker Mayfield? Yes, these are rankings for the rest of this week. So you're not going to see Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, anyone on bye. Wide receiver, please. I got you with the receivers. All right, we're going rapid fire back into the comments. QB rankings, bye week hit me hard. Need a QB to pick up. Yeah, so the QBs to look for: Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, Bo Nix. These are the 3 QBs that are probably available in a bunch of leagues. Good morning, Sam. Russell, Gino. Yeah, we got to that one. Oh, Bowers or Hawkinson? Yeah, it's Bowers. It's got to be Bowers over Hawk. Shakir, JSN, PPR. Yeah, I think that one's JSN, but it's close. Estimate or Tank Dell. Standard league, got to go Estimate. You got to go with the running backs in non-PPR leagues. Happy Sunday, Sam. JMO or Shakir and Chase Brown or Ladd? Yeah, so it's got to be Shakir over Waymo JMO. Jameson Williams, the role was good last week, and don't get me wrong, there's a ceiling for Jameson Williams this week. I don't want to just dismiss Jameson Williams because there is a real ceiling there, kind of similar to the Brian Thomas Jr. ceiling, honestly. I think about them kind of similarly this week, but there's a way better floor for Shakir, who's been really consistent. And there's a real risk that the Lions just don't need to throw that much. They're 14-point favorites. I mean, honestly, truly wild. They're coming out before the game saying that the coach is going to get fired for the Jags if they lose when they are 14-point underdogs. Like, just a lack of awareness, it feels like. Or maybe just, they want an excuse to fire Doug Peterson. But Doug Peterson's gone, guys. He's as good as gone. But yeah, Shakir over JMO. And it's not like Shakir doesn't have a ceiling. I don't know if the ceiling is maybe quite as high as what we've seen from Jameson Williams at times. We haven't seen Shakir over 20 points, but the floor is really solid. I think I lean towards the floor in this one. And then Chase Brown is just, like, you just kind of can't bench him. You can't really bench a guy in the role that Chase Brown is in. Even though the matchup's tough, the Chargers are one of the better defenses in the league. They're allowing the fewest points per game in the NFL on defense. Only like 13 points per game the Chargers are allowing. They haven't played the Bengals, though, and the Bengals offense is going to score more than 13 points. Chase Brown had 9 catches last week, which is absolutely ridiculous. You don't see wide receivers do that for the most part. I'm going Kareem Hunt over Nick Chubb. I like Chubb, but I like Hunt much more. Hey, Sam, thoughts on Mooney and Chubb? Yeah, this one's probably pretty close, honestly. I don't hate Mooney this week. I think most likely we see Surtain follow Drake London. I do really like Chubb this week, though. Yeah, it's Chubb. It's Chubb over Mooney. MVS, Dobbs, Pearsall, Estimate, or Pollard in my flex full PPR. Yeah, these are the types of questions, man, I love. This is a true flex decision here, and I think it's Pearsall. And get MVS out of here, man. I'm playing Pollard over MVS. I'm playing Estimate over MVS. I'm playing Pearsall and Dobbs over MVS. Guys, MVS is not startable. I really think he wasn't even a good ad. Like, I'm so anti-MVS with the role that he was in last week. Let me just pull up Scantling again. I knew we were going to get some Scantling questions and that I was going to go on a tangent about him. This reminds me a lot, in a bad way, of Jerick McKinnon a season ago or 2 seasons ago, where he absolutely destroyed me in the fantasy football playoffs, getting 2 touches a game, scoring on all of them. But the role is not good, guys, for McKinnon. He had 55% of the snaps last week. He ran 15 routes. He had 3 targets. All those were season highs. He had 3 catches, got all 3 of his targets. 2 of those went for touchdowns, long ones. He was wide receiver 2. It was his only game over 1 catch. We're not starting guys in week 11 when they have 1 game with more than 1 catch. And when you have another good option, too. Like, I think, by the way, to answer this question, I think I'd probably go Pearsall over Estime, over Pollard, over Dobbs, and over MVS. Jamo or Shakir? Yeah, it's Shakir. I think we got to that one in the YouTube live as well. Switch over to the running back ranks here. Hey, Sam, any word on the weather for San Francisco and Seattle? Yeah, so Weatherman Sam, it's a bye week. Weatherman Sam, he's on bye, taking the week off because there's no weather to be concerned about. A well-timed bye week for Weatherman Sam. There's absolutely no weather to be concerned about this week, so I'm not even going to put on the Weatherman Sam hat this week. It's a well-timed bye because we're heading into like the time of the year where the weather is going to start to pick up. And there's going to be some significant weather to be on top of over the next month, especially as we get into the fantasy football playoffs. But this week, nothing to be concerned about. There's a couple notes. The Seahawks and 49ers, there's a chance of showers that are increasing later into the game. It's not significant. Like they're just be aware there might be some rain in the Seahawks 49ers game, but not enough for you to even waste like any brain power or energy or stress thinking about it. It's not going to impact the game. It's not. And then the Packers and the Bears, that game also, there might be some slight rain. There's some wind gusts up to 15 or 20 miles an hour. Not concerning at all. There might be, the report is there might be a few raindrops in the Packers, Bears, and the Seahawks 49ers. So don't let a few raindrops knock you off course. Just not noteworthy like at all. All right. Weatherman Sam will be back next week, well rested after the bye week this week. Hey Sam, Aaron Jones or Mooney at flex? Yes, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones over Mooney. Pick one, Juwan, Ladd, or Swift. Full PPR, yes, Juwan. Got to be Juwan. I think Juwan Jennings over Ladd. I like Ladd a lot. I think Juwan Jennings is just a smash start. We've seen it twice. He's 2 for 2. There's 2 games we've seen Juwan Jennings without Ayuk and without Debo. Or without Debo. We haven't seen him without both. That would be an even bigger smash spot. But the game without Debo, he scored 45 points. And then the game last week without Ayuk, he went for almost 100 yards. Didn't score in that one. But he's the primary X receiver, outside boundary receiver now for the 49ers. He just took the Ayuk role. I like Ladd a lot too in this game versus the Bengals, but yeah, this one's Jennings. CMC, Kyron Hunt. Who do I bench? You bench Hunt there? There's no benching McCaffrey. McCaffrey is literally in a tier of his own, in my opinion, this week. I think he scores. Hey, Sam, can you give me a 4-leg ML for today? Connie, I got you, man. So we got first of all, let's hop to the free player props. I know that's not what you're asking for, but I will talk through some of the games I like. Tucker Kraft over 33.5 yards. Juwan Jennings over 58.5 yards. These are 2 free player props for me this week. In terms of the teams I like this week, so the underdogs I like the Steelers to win. I think that the Falcons also win. Those are both underdogs this week if you're feeling risky with it. In terms of favorites that I like the Browns to beat the Saints. I think Nick Chubb has a big game, and the Browns coming off the bye. The Saints are just so depleted offensively. I like the Jets to beat the Colts. I like the Rams to beat the Pats. Browns, Colts, Rams. I think all 3 of those teams win. And those are all projected somewhat close games. I think the Rams, I'd be pretty surprised if they lost to the Pats. In New England is giving them some credit at home there too. Those are probably the 3 that stand out to me. I mean, the Lions are minus 1,000. They're 14-point favorites. Lots of buys for my starters this week. Elijah Moore, Hunter Henry in the flex. Yeah, so we actually talked about Elijah Moore when we talked about this game. We talked about every single game at the beginning of the live and all the relevant players. And Elijah Moore is a relevant player this week. Make no mistake about it. Don't be shocked when we're seeing Elijah Moore targets. And I think all of the Browns pass catchers, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, all kind of interesting this week. Hunter Henry projects a bit better. This one's close. I mean, Hunter Henry's not a terrible option either. The Saints are a worse defense than what their data shows so far this season too. They lost Lattimore. They're dealing with a couple injuries. Their defense is bad. This is one of the worst defenses in the league. They've been crushed by running backs. They're not great versus receivers. I just seen a question here, Mooney versus MVS. Like you guys are you're just dying for me to keep going on this MVS rant. But yeah, you're definitely playing Mooney over MVS. But Elijah Moore, he's seen, 21 targets? Yeah, 21 targets he's seen in his last 2 games with Jameis Winston. I mean, he's seeing consistent targets, and this is a good matchup. Hunter Henry seeing consistent volume all but last week, basically. He had at least 5 catches in 3 straight, and then last week he 1 catch, 14 yards. But the target share was still there, 17% target share for Henry. So this one's close, man. I think I lean towards Elijah Moore personally, though. I generally don't like to start 2 tight ends if I don't need to. Ridley or Chase Brown is Chase Brown. Higgins, Jennings, or Lamb? Yeah, it's Lamb. It's Lamb, then it's Higgins, then it's Jennings. All over JK. Tight end. Yeah, I got you the tight ends. Let me know in the TikTok comments what position you want to see next. I will not see your comment if you aren't following. You got to follow on TikTok to see comments. That's how it works. I don't make the rules. What's up, Sam? Will Dissly or Hunter Henry? What's going on, Gabriel? Shout out to you for tuning into the YouTube live. We're live on TikTok and YouTube. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. Seriously, guys, I appreciate all of you so much. I look forward to these all week. These live streams always go so fast from my perspective. It does not feel like we've been on for as long as we have, almost 3 hours now. We got like a little over an hour till the game time. But yeah, shout out to you as well, Gabriel. Sending good vibes to everybody in this live right now. Will Dissly or Hunter Henry? Yeah, so I think it's Henry. I get Dissly this week. I do. I don't want to underrate Will Dissly's ceiling. Dissly's been the number one tight end for the Chargers pretty consistently now. He's playing over half the snaps. The snap share did dip a tiny bit last week. I think Hayden Hurst is active this week, I believe. He had a 33% target share last week. His targets per route run rate, Will Dissly's targets per route run rate, the percentage of times he's targeted on routes that he's running is number one in the NFL among tight ends. 33% of his routes, he's getting targets. He was at 55% last week. That's insane. And the pass volume was low, so it's like a little bit of a small sample size issue there. But now he gets a great matchup versus the Bengals. The Bengals have been absolutely annihilated by tight ends this season. I think this game will be high scoring. I like Justin Herbert a lot this week. So yeah, Will Dissly's a good sleeper this week. He still projects worse than Hunter Henry. I think you can start Dissly over Henry if you're in on all of that narrative, though. I think their ceilings are pretty comparable. Their floors are pretty comparable. They're pretty comparable options. I think I have them more or less in the same tier. But Henry has been better over the course of the season. He's averaging more points per game, more yards per game. He's playing more snaps, having a higher target share, more targets, more catches, more yards per reception, more touchdowns, more routes. He's been a little less efficient, but on more volume. So yeah, that's why Hunter Henry projects a bit better. But you're not crazy for going Dissly. All right, let's hop over to the running backs here. Darnold or Tua, yeah, I don't want to start either of these guys really, like at all. I think it's Tua though over Darnold. Would you go Pearsall over Najee in PPR? I would definitely consider it. I would definitely consider this, especially with the report that it sounds like Jaylen Warren's going to give it a go. Without Warren in, I feel like the floor for Najee, like just the volume floor, the touch volume floor was pretty high. Najee's projecting a bit better here, but I think the ceiling for Pearsall is definitely higher, like definitely higher. I think I'd probably go Pearsall, honestly. Walter agrees with me about the ceiling take there. The matchup's better for Pearsall. The Ravens have been really good versus running backs this season. Warren and Cordell Patterson are going to be active. Man, I mean, we have not seen very many big games. Chase Brown had 9 catches last week. Najee's not getting 9 catches, guys. Rashad White and Chase Brown, they're the two guys that have had good games. Chase Brown twice had good games versus the Ravens. That almost bodes better for Jaylen Warren's role, though. Yes, I think Pearsall over Najee's fine. I think I would probably do that myself. Tyreek or T? I think it's T over Tyreek. Sam the man. Josh Downs or Jalen Waddle? JP, how we doing, man? Oh man, this is not a good situation to be in between Downs and Waddle. Downs has been better than Waddle this season, but we got A-Rich starting this week. Waddle has not been over 10 points since week 1. We got him projected for 10 in the Walter Picks app. Yeah, it's Downs. And the Jets are not a scary defense. Really, since the firing of their coach, they've been one of the worst defenses in the league. So at least Downs has that going for him. Obviously, the Raiders defense isn't good either. Samster, Ladd or Cedric T at flex, and then Pearsall or Juju at flex. Adrian, how we doing, man? Good to see you back in the live. Let me get to the wide receivers here. I definitely would go Ladd over Cedric Tillman. I get the appeal of both these guys. Cedric Tillman's been balling. Cedric Tillman's 3 for 3 in his last 3 games. Let's pull this up. Ladd projects much better. The thing about Tillman, too, is Elijah Moore and Judy, they've both been very involved, too, over the last 3 weeks. It hasn't really mattered for Tillman. He's been a top 12 receiver in 3 straight games. Now he gets the Saints. Not a scary defense. But the matchup is better for Ladd. I mean, the Bengals are a very good matchup. The Bengals are one of the most likely teams to actually put up points versus the Chargers, who would lead the NFL in points allowed. They've allowed the fewest points per game, the Chargers. I don't think that holds up versus the Bengals offense, how good they're playing. with T. Higgins back too. That's the game tonight. I think it's Ladd over Tillman. I think the ceiling's better for Ladd. I think you could argue this one honestly all day. But the floor and ceiling project better for Ladd. I'm going Ladd over Tillman. Start to estimate Lockett, Keenan, or Addison. I think that one's Keenan and Estime. I don't feel great about it, but I think I would go Keenan over Lockett and Addison. I'm playing Jennings over Ladd too. I'm playing Jennings over Ladd. I'm playing Ladd over Tillman. Jennings needs to be started, guys. He really does. He's 2 for 2 in games without Debo or Ayuk. What's the reason for JMO? I just think that the Lions' pass volume has the potential to be extremely low. They're 14-point favorites versus the Jags. The Jags have had a horrible run defense this season. Like, we could see only 15 pass attempts for the Lions. Is Mac Jones really going to keep up? Probably not. Mac Jones had 5 yards per attempt last week. That is below what we've seen from Bryce Young this season. What's your thoughts on Cole Kmet with his new OC? Caden, how we doing, man, in the TikTok live? Yeah, so Cole Kmet, I mean, the whole Bears offense is definitely just one to watch this week. I don't have any sort of solid take about the impact on Cole Kmet. I don't want to start him. I guess that's a solid take because he's been under 5 points in 3 straight games. He's still been out there almost every snap. So definitely something to watch. It's possible it ends up being bad for Kmet. His role really can only go down in terms of the snap percentage. We did see Gerald Everett play a bunch back in week 1 and thought that was going to be the thing this season. Hasn't been really since week 1. He had a 15% target share last week, had 2 catches, 13 yards. He's still not a guy I'm very excited about for fantasy because he's like the 5th best option on the offense at best behind Swift and DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. So definitely something to watch with this whole offense. I'm definitely intrigued about the Swift-Roshan split, how that looks. I kind of think that will lean towards Swift more with this new OC, but we'll see for sure in this game versus the Packers. Why start Lions defense? Because they're playing the Jags. They're 14-point favorites versus Mac Jones. Mac Jones had 5 yards per attempt. He had 111 passing yards last week. Kraft or Disley? I'm going Kraft over Disley. I'm going to tight end ranks again. I'm going Taysom over Kraft personally for the ceiling, but Kraft has a better floor. Hunt or Jacobs? It's Hunt. It's got to be Hunt. Have to start Hunt. Let me run through the must starts again really quickly. Let's just run through the top 10 of each position. So we're starting Lamar, Josh Allen, obviously. Let me go through the non-obvious must starts. Like in almost all situations, you must start these guys. Brock Purdy, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson. These are the must start quarterbacks this week. At running back, you're starting McCaffrey. You're starting Achane. You have to start Kareem Hunt. He's a top 10 option. The Bills are allowing the most catches, the most yards in the receiving game to running backs this season. Kareem Hunt had 7 catches last week. Kareem Hunt was a top 10 running back last week, and he didn't even score a touchdown in PPR leagues, at least. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery need to be started versus the Jags. Aaron Jones is a good start versus the Titans. Breece Hall needs to be started. Jonathan Taylor, I still think is a must start, even with A-Rich starting, and that might mean potential vulture touchdowns, potential less receiving work, probably less receiving work. I still think JT versus the Jets is a pretty good spot. Chase Brown needs to be started. He had 9 catches last week. I like Nick Chubb as a good start. I don't think he's in the must-start territory, though, in all situations. Bless you. Thank you. Should I give up Amari Cooper for JT? Yeah, I would do that. At wide receiver, you have to start George Pickens. You have to start CeeDee Lamb versus the Texans. They've been crushed by slot receivers this season. Hop over to the wide receiver ranks here. Start CeeDee Lamb. Don't overthink it. I get how bad the Cowboys offense looked last week, under 50 passing yards for Cooper Rush. But they played the Eagles last week. Now they get the Texans, a much better matchup for slot receivers too. Cook or Pollard? Yeah, I think I would go. Oh gosh. I mean, I'm so scared to start Cook versus the Chiefs. I think it is Cook over Pollard, yeah. JMO or Moore? I think I'd go DJ Moore over JMO. You got to start Jawan Jennings in most leagues. I'm destined for a running back. Mostert or Javonte? I think it's Mostert. Put the tight ends back up. I got you. Bo Nix or CJ? Yeah, I think I had Bo Nix over CJ. Adrian, London, Mooney, or Jennings, Dell. Pick 3. This is a bench 1. I think you just bench Dell. I think you play these other 3 guys, you bench Dell. I traded CeeDee Lamb for Mike Evans and Rashad White a few days ago. What do you think? Don't hate it. I'd go Evan Ingram over Taysom. Should I trade London or Garrett Wilson for Neighbors? Yes, I would trade both London and Garrett Wilson for Neighbors, and also Andrews or Ingram this week. It's Ingram for me. I'm going Bowers over Taysom. Non-PPR is close, though. Taysom really good at non-PPR. What were those two free player props again? Benji, I got you. We are up to almost 65%. If we hit both these, I think we're up to 65% on the season. I feel very good about both of them. Tucker Kraft over 33.5 receiving yards. This has been his floor over the last 6 weeks. This is the floor for Tucker Kraft. We've seen at least 33 receiving yards in 5 of his last 6 games. And now he gets the Bears. And the Bears are allowing 68 receiving yards per game, which is the 6th most in the NFL. And then we got Juwan Jennings versus the Seahawks. Juwan Jennings has been over this in both games. He's played without Debo or without Ayuk. He had 175 in that first one without Debo. He had 93 last week without Ayuk. He's playing over 90% of the snaps. He is their primary X receiver on the boundary, over 30% target share in both those games. No George Kittle this week. No Ayuk, obviously. I like Jennings to go over 60 yards as well. Those are the 2 free player props of the week. Would you start? Is Justin Jefferson still safe? Yeah, he's definitely still safe. Had his first game under 10 points last week, but no reason to be panicked about Justin Jefferson, I don't think. Sam, help. Cooper or Tillman? Cooper or Tillman and Jonnu or Knox? Yeah, so I'm a bit out on Amari Cooper. I do think the ceiling is high for Amari. Let's see if we got that report yet. We might not get it right on this live stream because that game's later in the day. Isaiah Pacheco expected to be healthy in time for week 12. Unclear if he'll play, though. I think we see a massive role for Kareem Hunt. Actives today. Jaylen Warren is active. Tyler Boyd is active. KJ Osborne is inactive. What does that mean for the Pats receivers? I mean, definitely think Booty is the clear wide receiver 1. I think that, it's Booty, then Douglas, then Bourne. Osborne's inactive. That's probably good for Polk and Baker, maybe. But I think that'll be the top 3. It'll be Booty, Douglas, Bourne for the Pats receivers this week. Very interesting. Thanks for the streams, as always. Cortland Sutton or Lad, thanks, man. Appreciate the positivity. I love these live streams. Shout out to everybody in here right now. If you're watching live on YouTube, you haven't hit the like and subscribe button yet, especially that subscribe button. Appreciate it a ton. I think we're almost up to 15,000 YouTube subscribers. That'd be a huge milestone. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, smash the follow button. I cannot see your comments if you don't follow. Do the wide receiver rankings. I got you. A lot of tough wide receiver decisions this week for sure. Excuse me as I battle through the sniffles here. Cortland Sutton or Lad? Yeah, I'm going Lad for sure. I feel like I'm a bit of a known Cortland Sutton hater, and he's proved me wrong for sure over the last month. My entire take, I had Cortland Sutton on my do not draft list this season, and my whole take was, what's the real ceiling for Sutton? Because last season he set a career high in touchdowns, and he didn't even break 14 points per game. He actually has never broken 14 points per game in his entire career. And this year he's having, a good stretch here. He's still only at 12 points per game. I mean, it's still not like a real league-winning ceiling. But if he keeps this up, I mean, I do think I'll take the L there. Anyways, tough matchup for him versus the Falcons. The role should still be good. He still should see significant targets. He's been over 28% target share now 3 straight. So Sutton's startable. But, yeah, I like Ladd more in the matchup. They're both projected exactly 14 points. I mean, this is actually closer than I in terms of how fast I answer this one. But, yeah, I like Ladd in the matchup. I think Ladd's a good option this week. A Chubb or Najee? I'm going Chubb over Najee for sure. Chubb is a very good option this week. I wanted him to be a free player prop, but they moved his lineup to like 65.5 rushing yards. I think there's a good chance Chubb goes up over 100 rushing yards and scores a touchdown this week. Winston or Rodgers? Yeah, I'd lean Winston there. May or Knicks this week? I'd go Knicks over May. Debo or Mooney? Got to start Debo. Guys, you have to start Debo Samuel. There's no Kittle. And obviously Ayuk's out. Sama, must-win week. Start one. Brian Thomas, MVS, Keenan Allen, full PPR. Yeah, I'm going to do my best not to keep going down the Marquez Valdez-Scantling rant, but he should not be a part of this question. Like, do not consider him. I'm honestly not convinced he's worth roster slots in most leagues. I think it's Brian Thomas here, though, over Keenan Allen. Player prop, yeah, Aiden, I just had it up. There's 2 of them today. It's Tucker Kraft over receiving and Juwan Jennings over receiving. Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, James Cook. Yeah, so it's Devontae Adams versus Deebo Samuel. That's a pretty good question. I think it's Adams. It's close, man. That was really close. Adams dealing with an illness, dealing with a wrist injury. Deebo playing without Kittle. It's a close call here. Both have a really high ceiling, strong floors. Adams projects a bit better. I think I lean Adams. Better matchup, though, for Deebo. Probably a closer game for Adams, most likely. Closer spread, at least. Rome Odunze or Javonte Williams. You can't start Javonte. You just can't. You can't do it. He's not even the starting running back on his own team now. And McLaughlin's going to mix in for the receiving work. It's unclear how big of a receiving role they really envision for Estime, who is a capable receiving back. We haven't really seen it much this season. Estime last week, he only ran 4 routes, despite having a career high in snap percentage. He didn't get a single target. Estime does not have a target this whole season. Wow. But yeah, it's a Dunze. It's a Dunze over Javonte. Javonte might not see 10 touches in this game. Taysom or Ingram? Yeah, it's Ingram just barely over Taysom. But Taysom has a higher ceiling. He does. So the guys that I'm terrified to start this week, Darnold and Tua. I'm kind of scared to start Goff too. Tua and Goff, it's less about me not liking them and more about me being concerned they might not even throw the ball 15 times in their games. They're massive favorites with good rushing attacks against bad defenses. Donald's been struggling. That game also might not be close. And then Anthony Richardson, just 44% passing completion. I think there's like a ceiling at least with the rushing touchdowns, but not a guy I really want to start. At running back, don't start Javonte. Just talked about that one. Don't start Jaylen Warren. He's probably going to play, but in what type of role in a tough matchup? The Ravens have been horrible in the secondary. They've actually been pretty good versus running backs. I don't want to start J.K. Dobbins with Gus Edwards back either. Keenan Allen, I have no interest in this week. I think Jameson Williams' floor is really low, and Josh Downs is just not as good with Anthony Richardson back. Kraft or Andrews? Yeah, I got Kraft over Andrews. I know Andrews is coming off his best game of the season, but I don't want to start Mark Andrews because Isaiah Likely's back. Estime or Madison? I'm going Estime. Jawan Jennings over Hopkins? Yep, I would do that. I'm going Jawan Jennings versus Metcalf. I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't know if I'd do that. Man, we got Jennings over Metcalf. I think maybe I would. This is a really close one. A little tough to know since we haven't seen Metcalf in a little while. It's tough to bench Metcalf. I think I would go Jennings. Again, we've only seen Jennings play 2 games without one of Deebo or Ayuk, and he's gone over 90 receiving yards and 7 catches in both those. I'm playing Breeze over Tyreek. Chubb, CeeDee Lamb, both good options this week. I think I would go with Lamb over Chubb personally. Deebo or CeeDee Lamb, I think I'd go CeeDee Lamb there too, but that one's close. I wouldn't knock you for going Deebo there. Metcalf or Higgins, I'm going Higgins over Metcalf. Let me go back to wide receiver ranks. Pitts or Kraft, I'm going Pitts over Kraft. Tillman or McConkey, I'm going McConkey over Tillman. Would you consider DK over Jennings because Seahawks will be? Yeah, I would definitely consider this one. I think this is really close. They project really close, like a point together. Metcalf has been good this season. Metcalf is a very good option, assuming he's back to full health, which he probably is. I do think it's very reasonable to go Metcalf in this one. I personally would go Jennings. I'm very high on Jennings this week. He's the free player prop of the day. We haven't really seen very many good receivers play the 49ers since CeeDee Lamb had 40 points versus them. Metcalf had 3 catches, 48 yards in his last matchup versus the 49ers. That feels notable. He had a worse game than both JSN and Lockett. I'm going Jennings here. I'm going Jennings. Chubb or Cook? I'm going Chubb. Mark has put up good numbers with Likely in. Yeah, he has. That's totally reasonable. I did expect some Mark Andrews pushback to these rankings here. Mark Andrews has put up good production with Likely in. Ignore the last game for a second. His best game of the season by far. And I think an outlier in terms of his usage because Likely didn't play and he had a season-high snap percentage just like we expected. In the month before that, he did go over 14 points 3 of his 4 games. The difference, though, a lot of that was coming through touchdowns. Like the role, though, wasn't actually that good. He didn't go over 20% target share in a single game. He didn't have a single game with more than 5 targets. like the role, the underlying usage for Andrews has been much, much worse with likely in. He's just scored a bunch of touchdowns, which he definitely could do, not to take away from the production, but the role is what's typically sticky. Week to week, consistent, I mean. So yeah, I'm a little out on Andrews. I'm not I do not think he gets more than 5 targets in this game. So what's the real ceiling and floor? The floor is low. The floor is what happened in week 9, less than 5 points. What happened in week 3 and week 4 is 0 points. That's the floor, I think, still for Andrews, if likely plays, his normal role. CD or Monty, I also have Dowdle just in case CD doesn't play. Yeah, this is a close one too. I think I personally would go Lamb because I have a high risk tolerance, but there's a really safe floor, I think, with Monty in this game. Yeah, I'm going Lamb though, personally. I'm going Estimate over Dobbins. Jennings versus Tyreek Hill. I think that one's probably Tyreek. Yeah, they're back to back. Let me go to the wide receiver ranks here. Jennings or McConkey? I go Jennings over McConkey. They're back to back, but they're in different tiers, in my opinion. Hey, Sam, London, Ridley, Debo, or Flowers? Just have to bench one. Thanks for all the help. Antonio, I got you, man. And this is a good spot to be in. I think it's Flowers versus Ridley here. I think you start with Debo, you start London. You probably start Flowers. Again, I like Ridley a lot. I think he's very underrated. I think his role is just flying under the radar for most people. Not if you tuned into this live stream, obviously, But yeah, it's Flowers. It's still Flowers over Ridley. It's close, though. For sure, it's close. Someone asked for the free player prop. Yeah, I got you. The free player prop is Tucker Kraft over receiving, Juwan Jennings over receiving. Stuck with Mahomes all year. Picked up Herbert last week. Yeah, I start Herbert. Tough to count against Mahomes. Is it though? Is it that tough? And again, I actually think the Chiefs beat I think the Chiefs beat the Bills. I don't think it's that tough to count against Mahomes though, for fantasy purposes. I mean, what does he have? 1 game more than 20 points this season? Underratedly, yeah, he's 1 game over 20 points. So I'm down to count against him for fantasy purposes. I don't want to count against him to win in actual NFL games. But yeah, I think that Herbert's definitely better. Thanks for the gift and the TikTok live. Appreciate it. T. Higgins or ETN. I'm definitely going T there. And Herbert's in a smash spot, man, versus the Bengals. I think the Bengals are a realistic offense to put up points versus what's been the best defense in terms of points allowed in the Chargers. AR-15 or BTJ at Superflex. So you got to go QB over wide receiver here. It's Richardson. It's Richardson over Brian Thomas Jr. for sure. Almost always you're going with a QB here. One of these guys could score 3 rushing touchdowns and the other one can't. I think it's pretty much that simple. Tank Dell or Jacoby Myers. Yeah, I think I'd go Jacoby. Evan Ingram or Kraft. I'm going Evan Ingram over Kraft. I like Kraft a lot. I like Pitts more than Kraft. CD for Pickens and Ramondre. It's fair deal. I mean, we got Pickens ahead of CD this week. I don't know about rest of the season. But Dak's likely out for the season, so it's pretty reasonable. It's a fair trade. Debo or Juwan Jennings. Yeah, it's Debo, then Jennings, but both are really good options. Drop Ferg, pick up Disley. Also have Otten, but he's on bye. Yeah, I would do this. I like Disley much more than Ferg this week. Let me go to the running back ranks here. Switch over to the running back ranks. Russ or Burrow? Yeah, I'm going Kareem over DeAndre. I'm going Burrow over Russ. Even in a tough matchup, I think Burrow's pretty much a must start. Tank Dell or Ricky Pearsall? Connor, this is a good one. Tank Dell probably projects a bit better. I do like Pearsall. I think they're pretty comparable options this week, honestly. Yeah, they're projected pretty close together. Less than a point difference in their projection. Better matchup for Pearsall. Let's look at the role for Pearsall last week. I think Kittle being out, it does give a bump to McCaffrey, to Pearsall, to Debo, and to Juwan Jennings. 4 for 73 and a touchdown for Pearsall. 64% snap percentage, 18% target share. I'm going Pearsall here. I think Pearsall over Dell. Despite what these projections say, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. Nico's back. I think there's a scarier floor than usual for Tank Dell this week. Hey, Sam, love the app. Thanks, man. Pick 3, Dobbs, Reed, Douglas, Estime, or Dunze. See, in a situation like this, I think it is kind of smart to just play Dobbs and Reed. Like, I think that raises the floor of your lineup to have both these guys. At least one of them's probably going to do well. They're the top 2 receivers on the team. And then Douglas, Estime, Dunze. Let's do that comparison. That's pretty close. Jamario Douglas, Estime, and a Dunze. Dunze might project best. He does. Yeah, it's a Dunze here. Swift or K9? Yeah, it's K9 over Swift. Back to back in the ranks here, but I'd go K9 over Swift. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, hit the follow button. I cannot see your comment unless you are following. That's how TikTok works. Downs or Bateman? Yeah, I would go Downs over Bateman still. Kamara for Nico straight up. Fair deal. It's a fair deal. I don't have time to sync your sleeper league right now. But yeah, I think it's a fair trade. And both guys project top 3 at their position rest of the season. Sam, please, K9 or Chase Brown full PPR? It's Chase Brown. You got to start Chase Brown this week. Have to start Chase Brown this week. He had 9 catches last week, guys. Swift or Ladd? This one's close, man. This one's close. And I would argue Swift, he's got actually a pretty good floor. It's there's a little uncertainty, with the whole Bears offense. How's it going to shake out with a new play caller? It probably shakes out in Swift's favor, I think. Swift is the floor play. McConkey's the ceiling play. Do you want to risk it for a higher ceiling? Go Ladd. That's what I would do. But I think Swift has a much safer floor than Ladd. He's going to get at least 15 touches in this game. Jennings over Ridley. Yeah, Juwan Jennings over Ridley. Downs, Bateman, Mike Will, or Watson, Sam. Yeah, I think I'd rank them in this order. Maybe I'd switch Watson over Mike Williams. I like Mike Williams rest of the season. I think he's going to mesh well with Russ. I like him as a sleeper, though. And he had 1 catch last week. You know who else had 1 catch last week? Not Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but basically every other week that was the case. MVS versus Mostert. Yeah, I feel like I've gone down this bit far enough that I can't say to start Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and he might project better here. He doesn't. He doesn't even beat Raheem Mostert in a PPR league. Again, Scantling has 1 game this season with more than a catch. Don't start him, man. Mostert has a touchdown ceiling, at least in this game. Ruben, how we doing? Reed, Kraft, Devontae Adams, BTJ, Ridley, bench 1. Yeah, you're probably benching Kraft here. You bench Kraft. You don't play 2 tight ends if you don't need to, especially in half PPR. All right, guys, that is my time on the YouTube Live. Thank you so much for tuning in. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Thanks for spending some time with me today. We'll be heading over to the TikTok Live for the last 15, 20 minutes in the subscriber-only comment mode portion of the live, guys. It's going to be fantastic, fantastic Sunday. Good luck, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back live either Tuesday night or Thursday night next week. Definitely Thursday night. I actually think I'll be taking Tuesday night off this week, but I'll be back live Thursday night. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel so you don't miss it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Again, if I didn't get your start sit, make sure you go to the Walter Picks app like I've had up on the screen all live. It's going to help you out. Good luck, everyone, and we'll be back super soon.